Good morning, everybody. My name is Brad Brooks, and I'm the Director for the City of Cheyenne Board of Public Utilities. And I just want to welcome everybody this morning to our fiscal year 2021 Goals and Planning session. This is something a little unique for us. Typically, we meet for an entire day and hold a session and have meetings in person. But unfortunately, due to our condition with COVID this year, we decided to try something new, and we're going to do a half-day session and meet from 8 to noon this morning. Hopefully, we'll be done by noon, depending upon the questions that we receive from participants and the audience, people attending. I just want to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy schedules and this morning to participate with us. I think you'll see we have a pretty interesting program prepared for this morning. I want to give kudos to our staff. They've put a lot of time and effort into these presentations. And hopefully by the end of the day, you'll kind of have a good idea of our direction that we are headed as a board and how we are going to meet the upcoming challenges and growth that we anticipate we see coming for our great city of Cheyenne. So I hope that you will be encouraged by what you see this morning. I also want to personally thank a couple individuals. Aaron Lamb and Brian Cole have spent a lot of time getting this webinar set up. It is something, like I said, different for us, but they've done a lot of work, and I just want to thank them both. They are both kind of moderating this whole program for us today, so I want to really tell them how much I appreciate all their work as well. I would ask that you'd be a little patient with us. We are, again, trying something new. Hopefully there won't be any glitches, but we kind of did a dry run and we think we have it together. Hopefully we'll see. We'll try, like I said, to be done around noon, depending on what questions we have. At approximately 10 o'clock, we'll try to take a 15-minute break so that everybody can stretch their legs and use the facilities if you need. So that'll be up at around 10 o'clock. With that, I have just some housekeeping rules that I'd like to just go over. Again, today's webinar is being recorded live. It's currently on the city's Facebook page live, and then it will also be available after today on the city's YouTube channel. So any of you, or if somebody misses it, you can let them know they can go look at that after today. We also invite and encourage comments and questions. And so just please note that all attendees will be muted during the presentation. If you have any questions for the speakers at any point, just please use the Q&A chat box that you see on your screen. And you can also use the raise your hand icon option to ask questions during the question and comment period at the end of each presentation, and we'll give time for that at the end of each presentation. We also ask that all presenters just mute yourself when you're not presenting, please. That'll just help. I do want to just do some introductions. There's a couple people that I've asked to give a quick short comment before we start. I also want to just verbally thank the mayor, Patrick Collins, is asked to participate this morning. Also, I just want to thank all and any city council members that have attended. We appreciate their interest and coordination and cooperation and support for us. I also want to just introduce who our board members are. So on our board, we have Mary Guthrie, who is our board president. Matt Pope is our secretary. We have Alan Cunningham as a board member, Keith Zabka as a board member, and John Edwards as a board member. And I just want to thank all of them for their support, encouragement, leadership, and direction they give us through the year. And so they're all on as well. So I just want to thank you for them. So next, I am going to turn it over to Mary Guthrie, and we're going to let Mary Guthrie share a few words. So Mary, welcome, good morning, and take it away.
You all know that I have a penchant for wearing hats. So I am wearing a hard hat today just to sort of exemplify all the wonderful things the board does. You mentioned that this is new for us, but certainly the challenges that the BOPU has faced through the years are also new. We have some challenges in terms of different revenue streams being affected and other sorts of things, but we're up for the job. And so I'm delighted to be here, and thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Next, I also had talked with Mayor Collins earlier in the week and wanted to give him an opportunity to share as well. So Mayor Collins, if you're there, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. You hear me okay there, Brad? Very good. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I was thinking back on my time on the City Council and sitting in on these goal setting sessions and sitting next to Tim Wilson and being so impressed by the group of people who came. It wasn't just, as I call it, the C-suite or the managers and the directors who were there that day, but it was also guys coming in with the big trucks and coming out. And what I really appreciated about it was how much they participated in the meeting, how much they were part of what was going on, and that they felt comfortable, participating. So I love what you guys are doing as far as the Board of Public Utilities. I think it's an important thing to reassess every year where you're going and how you're going to get there. And I love the fact that you guys don't just tell your employees and your stakeholders what's going on, but everybody gets to participate in that. Brad asked me to maybe share a little bit about the challenges the city's facing and maybe some ways that the board might be able to help. And I can tell you, I'm an expert mayor now. Today is I started on January 4th. It's March 4th. I got 2 months in. So, quite frankly, I don't know all the things I don't know yet. But there's a few things that have come to me. And, one of the things I'm noticing is that the city of Cheyenne is growing, but it's poised to really grow. And so I'm very concerned about growth, the rate of growth, how we're going to pay for it, how we're going to keep up. And I think you guys are sharing that same concern that we're growing south, we're growing east, and providing infrastructure. For us, it's fire departments and police departments and roads and those things. And for you guys, it's water and sewer services and making sure that that everything is in place. And I think that challenge is really big. I was reflecting with Mr. Seagrave last night after our committee of the whole meeting, and we were talking about this meeting and the visionaries that did stage 2 for the Board of Public Utilities. And I'm sure there were people in Cheyenne who are looking at you guys thinking, what in the heck is going on? But today we're reaping the rewards of that. And so I think the challenge is what is the next stage 2? What is the next revolutionary thing that the Board of Public Utilities can do that 50 years from now, people are going to be saying, wow, those guys were visionaries, and having the courage to look at those and present them and hopefully implement them. So we could be transactional and just go day to day, or we could be transformational and look at how can we build and make this an amazing place for the future. So that was one of the thoughts and one of the challenges that I think we have as a city, you guys have as a board. One of my biggest concerns is affordable housing. And I guess you have to have a definition of what affordable housing is to start with. And for me, affordable housing means you spend 30% or less of your income on the cost of housing. So that can be anything from really inexpensive apartments up to single family homes. But I think that's one of our biggest challenges. And how can you, as the Board of Public Utilities, help with that? And the honest truth is I don't know the answer, but one of the things I was thinking about is our system development fees. As I understand it, Mr. Wilson used to share with me, and now Brad does, the importance of system development fees. You're buying into a system that we have spent all these years developing so that we can capture the next resource to take care of your needs for water and sewer. Okay, I bought into that. But one of the questions I have is, when we do a system development fee for a house, and if that is an 800 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath house on a 4,500 square foot lot, and we have a house that's 5 bedrooms, 5-bath on a 12,000 square foot lot, it seems that there's a disproportionate use of resources on that. And maybe we could, as a community, talk about maybe having a variable schedule for system development fees, so that on the lower end, those houses become more affordable. Also, could we talk about maybe how system development fees are paid, instead of a check up front, and maybe land sits for 4 or 5 or 10 years before it fully gets developed, maybe it gets paid at the time of the building permit, so that it helps spur development. So thinking outside the box a little bit like that, are there things that we could do as a board and as a city to help with the development and help with the cost of affordable housing? So those are a couple of things I was thinking about. When I ran, I talked a lot, and I think you guys heard me say that I want to make sure that our city is business friendly. That I'm really in favor of having good rules and regulations that make sense. And from the Board of Public Utilities, obviously you guys have health, safety, the prosperity of our company or our city at heart. But I think I would just challenge you to make sure that as we're looking at our rules and regulations, are they Cheyenne friendly? Do they make your jobs easier, or do they make the way we do business in Cheyenne easier? And so I just want to make sure that we're looking at that and that challenge. And I think we have to do the same thing at the city level. Are we doing the things we need to do so that people want to do business here? And I would share with you also, I want to make sure that we're in the right mindset. Are we regulators or are we consultants? And what I mean by that is, regulator just says no, but a consultant says, I hear what you're saying, and maybe the board can't do it that way, or the city can't do it that way, but here's 4 or 5 other things I've seen in the last 30 years that might help you get where you need to go. And we're that consulting mentality, where those projects becomes our project. We're trying to help get them over the line. I think the board, from what the reputation I have heard, does a good job of that. But again, I just want to challenge you to make sure that we're having that mindset. When I did my building, I heard too many times, that's not my job, when I'd ask for help. And it wasn't their job. But I think when we're public servants, it's our job to help get our community to help it grow and to help be successful. And so why it may not be our job, I don't know why we couldn't take 30 seconds to give them some advice on how they can do their job and make it successful through our processes. What I would love to see is we're the tip of the Front Range, and I would like to see Cheyenne be known as the best place to do business. It is my opinion, and I think it's going to be proven out over the next couple bienniums, that the state is getting out of the financing cities, towns, and counties. I don't think they're going to want to do that anymore. And so I always say that we're going to eat what we kill. And the only way we're going to do that is we have to grow our economy. And I think the Board of Public Utilities is a very important part of us creating a culture where people want to do business. And so I just want to let you know that your Board of Public Utilities is appreciated by the governing body, that we think you guys do a good job. And I'm looking forward to hearing your goals today and being part of this process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Collins. I appreciate those comments, and perfect lead in. One of your comments made just about the challenges that we face as a city. Before I hand it off to Ashley Miller, our administrative assistant, again, I just want to thank our employees. We have a great bunch of employees that I would say are up to the challenge. I'm impressed every day by just the ideas, how creative our staff is, and they really kind of do look outside the box. And so I think you're going to see some of those ideas today. But I couldn't be any happier with the crew that we have and the job that we're doing as the Board of Public Utilities. And I think you have our commitment that we do strive and will continue to strive to work with the community, with developers, with builders, with city staff and the city administration to make this a place that people desire to come. So I appreciate all your comments and appreciate you being here with us today. Next, I am going to turn it over and we are going to start. Ashley Miller, who is our Administration Division Manager, will be our first speaker. And so I'm going to turn it over to Ashley and we'll begin. So Ashley, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you again. Thanks for joining us this morning. Our first presentation for you is the financial snapshot of the board. And just as an update, all of the information and numbers in this presentation are as of January 31st, 2021. The first items that we're going to discuss this morning are our revenues. On the screen, I'm showing you our operational budget and our non-operational. Operational revenues are for the services that we provide, such as water, for residential, commercial, industrial, and all of our different classes, whereas non-operational revenue is the revenue that we receive for things such as system development fees, interest, and donated utilities. To date, we have the screen that is in front of you. It shows the operational and non-operational revenues that we have received through July through October of 2020 were drier months, resulting in higher than anticipated residential and commercial water consumption. This provided the board with somewhat of a surplus compared to our projections. However, our industrial consumption was consistent in July and August, with Holly Frontier being one of our biggest consumers. We did see a significant drop beginning in September of over 50% of their consumption, followed by an additional decrease in October, which resulted in a 70% reduction compared to the 10-year average that they've consumed. Luckily, the net surplus of revenue generated by commercial and residential consumption in the months of July through October have provided us with an offset for the lost revenue due to Holly Frontier's reduction. And in going forward into fiscal year 2022, the board anticipates a decrease in total water revenue of more than $2 million after applying a consistent rate increase across to all of our customer classes. We are also monitoring the possibility of drought and the potential impacts that could have on our revenues. The next slide we have for you guys shows you the sewer revenues. Oh, sorry, I apologize. Let me go back. We did not discuss non-operational revenues for water. My apologies. Our non-operational revenues for the water are higher than expected. However, this is due to revenues received in fiscal year 2020, which had to be accounted for in fiscal year 2021. Additionally, donated utilities are budgeted at a zero projected budget, but we have received $418,624 in donated revenues this fiscal year. You will hear me throughout the day remind you that system development fees are restricted funds, and these cannot be used to support operations, repairs and replacement, or projects that do not expand our system. Now moving on to sewer revenues. Again, this slide shows you what we budgeted for our operational and non-operational revenues and what we have received to date for operational and non-operational revenues. Overall, sewer revenues for operations is down, again, due to Holly Frontier's operational conversion has reduced their discharge amount. 7 months into fiscal year 2021, we would anticipate having received nearly 58% of our revenues, but Holly Frontier has only consumed 38% of what we projected, whereas the residential and commercial classes are right on mark. By fiscal year end, sewer revenues are anticipated to be short by approximately $500,000. And going into fiscal year 2022, the board anticipates a decrease in total sewer revenues of nearly $600,000. Again, this is after a rate increase across all of our classes. Non-operational revenues for fiscal year 2021 are higher than projected for system development fees, and this is a result of the prior period adjustment which was done in this fiscal year. Donated utilities on the sewer side are also budgeted at $0, and to date we have received $271,120. Excuse me. Again, like the water side, system development fees for the sewer side are restricted funds, and they cannot be used to support operations, repairs, replacements, or projects that do not expand our current system. Looking at water expenses, the slide shows you what we originally budgeted and what was approved. We've also included the revised budget for prior year carry forwards and the expenses to date. The operational trends are as follows. We've only expended 50% of our operational budget. Again, being in the 7th month of our budget, you would anticipate us spending about 58% of the budget. We are concerned about our revenues due to Holly Frontier and the potential of a drought, so we are proceeding cautiously with our expenses. Because of our projections for fiscal year 2022 and the reserve status, which we will talk about a little bit later, we are looking closely and considering all of our approaches and being very conservative. And I did it again and jumped forward to sewer without discussing water's non-operational revenue. My apologies. The non-operational trends for the water side reflect that we've only spent 17% of our non-operational budget. However, many of the projects that are budgeted are already underway, meaning that these funds are obligated. One of the areas of concern for the board is the ability to maintain the expected water rehabilitation schedule, which is impactful to our overall system because by getting behind, it could lead to costly repairs in the future due to the aging infrastructure, the reduction in revenues, and the increase in expenses. Taking a look at revenue expenses, this slide shows you our budgeted operations and non-operations, our revised budget, and our current expenses to date. The board is being even more cautious with sewer operational expenses due to the reduced revenue. We currently show an expense of about 45% of our budget. And with revenue projections in fiscal year 2022 and our reserve statuses and levels for our sewer funds, we again are proceeding cautiously and conservatively. Non-operational trends show that we have spent about 18% of our budget. Again, this is due to the expenses for projects, with many of them well underway and the funds obligated. Like water, sewer is Sewer's rehabilitation schedule is a concern for us. And again, it is impactful and could be costly to continue extending those schedules because our infrastructures age, the reduction in revenue, and of course the increases in costs that we've seen. We'll now take a brief look at our reserves, which we will be following up with a reserve presentation after this one. This is the water reserves on the screen. You can see the current cash balance, our anticipated revenues, outstanding expenditures, and the operational and capital reserve requirements. And what the statements reflect is that we have an excess of reserve funds on the water. However, the reason we have an excess of funds available on water is due to the use of restricted funds. Currently, if the board was only to consider unrestricted funds to cover our reserves, we would be short by $780,609. So the board is looking at our options moving into fiscal year 2022 to become reliant on operational reserves and less reliant on system development reserves to cover our policy and reserve levels. Like the water side, sewer has a reserve fund. Again, on the screen, you will see our current cash balance, outstanding and anticipated reserves, outstanding budgeted expenses, our operational and capital reserve levels. And unlike the water side, even with using restricted funds, we are not able to meet our reserve levels. Currently, the board cannot meet the required reserve levels with only the use of unrestricted funds. We would be short by $3,042,990. As a reminder, restricted funds has limited use and should only be used for expanding our capacity. Again, the board is seeking a very conservative approach to fiscal year 2022's budget to help offset our reserves and depend upon operational funds instead of our restricted funds. I would like to discuss our investments. Currently, the board maintains investments in WyoStar. Though it may appear that we have a lot of money sitting out there as invested funds, the board maintains less than 11% of our cash in our checking account. So that means over 60% of our investment balances are the operating cash that we have, which are obligated and approved for the budget and expenditures we currently anticipate. The remaining 40% of this balance is for restricted funds, debt requirement, and capital add and replacements. The board also has debt obligations. As you can see, we have debt obligations for both the water and sewer side. And moving into the future, we anticipate additional debt on the water side as we work to complete the hydroelectric project and the North City tank project. At this point, I would be glad to answer any questions you may have. Not seeing any questions, I'll give it a few more minutes, then we can move on and talk about projections and reserves. I'm going to go ahead and move on As I am your next presenter, so you get to listen to me a little bit longer. The next item that we want to talk about today is the projections and reserves of the board. Being a government entity or any business entity at all, it's important to have reserves to ensure our financial stability no matter what situation comes our way. GFOA, which is the Government Financial Officers Association, has a lot of information and details about reserves. And they have some common reserve focuses for our industry, as well as they define types of reserves. The two types of reserves the board focuses on are operating reserves and capital reserves, based on the statement that we provide every month in our financial board packet. Some of the areas that are important for us to focus on are the extreme volatility or extreme event volatility, and aging infrastructure. What are our reserves for? What are the common things that the industry maintains reserve levels? As defined, it'd be for rate stability, debt rating, for liquidity, or for capital repairs and replacements. One of the things that I would ask is how much is enough for the board? What do we want to maintain and what makes us feel comfortable? Our current policy and practice is that we maintain 120 days of operating reserves and 2% of our capital assets. Would the board like to change their focus of reserves, or is this what makes sense for us? And when would we decide to use our capital reserves? The board's current practice has been very conservative, and we will cut projects generally before reaching out to use reserve levels. An area that helps us define our reserves and report reserves in the government environment is GASB 54. GASB is a governmental accounting standard board, and it requires that we define our non-spendable, restricted funds, committed funds, assigned funds, and unassigned funds in our financial statements to help make government accounting and government reporting more transparent, which will lead us into explaining the projection and reserve statements that are reported each month. So oops, I didn't share the words, sorry about that. So what I want to do is go through each section of the statement that many of our board members and city council and those who participate in our board meetings regularly are used to seeing. The first section is our cash and investment balances. These balances come from the ending balances of the prior fiscal year and are found on our balance sheet. Our our reserve and projection statements are based on an annual statement each month. Section 2 of our statement is our actual cash received from the start of the fiscal year to the end of the reporting month in the different fund types. The different fund types are listed above each section, such as operating cash and customer deposits. Section 3 of these statements includes our actual expenditures to date. which are the EALs approved at every board meeting, our payroll expenses, and any transfers between operating cash, debt services, customer deposits. Section 4 is the cash and investment balances as of the end of the month. This is taking the year-end balances, adding in the revenue to date received, and reducing the balance by the actual expenses. And flowing down the statement, we have section 5. This is our anticipated revenue. It is the budgeted projections less prior month's revenue to get what we anticipate to receive for the remainder of the fiscal year. Section 6 is the remaining budget for the year. It is all of the budgeted and approved expenditures less our actual expenses. This assumes that we will expend our entire approved budget. We move to section 7, which is our total projections. This takes section 5, our remaining anticipated revenue, less our remaining anticipated expenses. Section 8 takes our total of cash investments from 4, adds the total anticipated revenue and expenses from section 7 to give us our year-end projected cash and investment balances. This next slide just gives you a snapshot of the statement that you are used to seeing in our monthly board packets to put all of the prior slides together. The current statement that we are sharing with you is a prior period statement, so this does not reflect our actual status as of January 31st. I just want to share that with you. This slide is an explanation of the slide to follow, which I'm going to go ahead and move forward and review this slide with you with the section that you commonly see on our monthly projection statements. So we obtain our recommended reserves by taking our projected operation and maintenance expense and dividing it by the remaining months of the budget, multiplying that by 4. As per the Water Environmental Federation, it is recommended to maintain at a minimum 3 months of expenses, while other organizations recommend less or more. The board has taken a conservative approach, and we opted for 120 days of expenses, though our last master plan recommended the board to have 180 days of operating reserves on hand. The projected unrestricted funds is taking operating cash plus customer deposits plus debt service plus bond debt reserves to obtain what we have as unrestricted funds. And again, I'll remind you that restricted funds are system development fees and pump station fees and are not included in this because they have a very specific use. You will either have a surplus or a deficit, which is calculated by taking the unrestricted funds less the recommended reserves. We then include the water accounts receivable or sewer accounts receivable, depending on the statement, which is obtained from the balance sheet. We then move down to our total projected unrestricted funds, and we get that number by adding the projected unrestricted funds plus our accounts receivable. To go down further, we will either have a surplus or a deficit of operating funds by taking our total projected unrestricted funds less our recommended reserves. On the opposite side of the statement, we have what is called our capital reserves. Again, this is a summary of how that information is presented. So I'd just like to take a brief, or I'd like to move forward, and I will just go ahead and explain that to you as well. Our recommended reserves for capital assets are calculated by taking the capital assets stated on the balance sheet times 2% to identify what we should have. This is an AWWA industry standard for having an adequate capital reserve level. We then move on to identify unrestricted funds, which in this case is the capital additions and replacement from Section 8 of the statement. Our total restricted funds, again, are system development fees and pump station fees, which have very limited use options. Moving further, so in this case, the 7.7 million on the screen is taking the unrestricted and restricted funds and adding them together. Now, you'll either have a surplus or a deficit after you take the total amount of funds less our recommended reserves. So some of the key points that I would like to share is the definitions of unrestricted funds. Unrestricted funds use can be for operational expenses, repairs and replacement, and this slide shares with you again how those funds are calculated or what fund categories make up the unrestricted funds. Whereas restricted funds, which are SDF fees and pump station fees, can only be used to increase capacity and support growth. So going forward, we have been looking at our current policies and practices and trying to identify the best and most conservative way to ensure that we have adequate reserves on hand. This is a summarization of the next slide, which I'm going to move forward and I will discuss the summarization with you. Moving forward, the board would like to present our projection and reserve statement in the following manner. We would like to report what our fiscal year budget is, which would be the approved budget with any approved amendments. We would like to identify our total unrestricted funds, which is adding our operating cash, customer deposit, debt service, capital add and replacement, and bond debt reserves. Take what the minimum reserve levels are, which again would be the 120 day of operational expenses and the 2% of our capital per the balance sheet. And then we would come up with the available funds of unrestricted by subtracting out the minimum reserve levels from the unrestricted fund levels. It's important for as per GASB 54, that we identify what are restricted funds. And we would do that on this statement by adding together the system development and pump station fees. We would then identify the days of reserves that we have on hand without or excluding, restricted funds. To do this, we would take our current budget, divided by 365 days to get our daily anticipated cost. We would take our available funds, divided by our daily anticipated cost to find out the days of reserves that we have on hand. Again, this excludes our restricted funds. We feel that it is an approach that that will support the GASB 54 standard while following our current operational and capital reserve policy and ensuring adequate reserves which don't rely on our current system development fee reserve levels. So to move forward, I would be glad to answer any questions that anybody might have. The statement that I provided to you guys today does not show our current status of reserve levels. And just to give you a brief update on where we are at this time, if we presented the current water reserve levels in the format that I showed you at the very end, the board would only have 77 days of operational unrestricted cash reserve levels, which would not meet our current policy as stated in the financial update. The sewer, as stated in the financial update, is in a position that we could only meet 40 days of the actual reserve levels. So it is really important that we consider this as we move forward and rely less on restricted funds. We have in the past used we have taken the capital reserve requirement and reduced that out of our restricted funds. And however, again, capital reserves are for repairs and replacements. So I just want to kind of clarify that and give an update there. With that, if there's no questions, I will then turn it over to Brad, who will be talking about our system development fees.
Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate all your input, very detailed description on just all of our financial package. I think it's very easy for everybody to see. It's pretty detailed, and there's a lot of little rules that we attempt and try to follow, strict policies that we try to follow, but it's not super straightforward. So it takes a little bit of digging in to see how all that works, but I appreciate the overview that you gave. So again, in the future, reaching out to Mayor Collins, City Council members, even our board members, if there's any further questions you would have or want us to go over with you in detail on our financials, Ashley and I would be glad at your request to meet with you at any time to look at those. So that invite is always open to you. So I just want to offer that. Next, I'm going to talk about system development fees. I thought it was very appropriate. You could even see in the comments that Mayor Collins brought up in his discussion that, again, system development fees is one of those things that is an expense that a lot of developers, builders, anybody doing new development within the city is required to pay. They are a one-time fee. I also appreciate Mayor Collins' comments. One thing I would like to address, and we are always looking at ways that we can, make those fees as affordable as possible. And I'll get into that a little bit in my discussion here in a minute. One of the comments, just back to Mayor Collins, those fees, and just so everybody knows, those fees are actually charged at the time of building permit. So the only fee that is charged up front is what we call our tap fee, and that tap fee is very minimal for both water and sewer. So at the time a tap is put in, that is the only fee that is collected before that work is done. And the system development fees generally are postponed and can be put off up to the point that you pull a building permit. So we don't require those from anybody until you are actually ready to begin construction on that piece of property. So that was one thing, Mayor Collins, that you'd brought up, and I just wanted to address that. That is how that is handled. So just to answer that question for you. As we kind of move forward on system development fees, there is an industry standard that we do follow. So it's these fees are not something that the board just arbitrarily comes up with. There is industry standards out there. As you can see on the screen, the American Water Works Association puts out a document that is probably 1 inch to 1.5 inches thick, full of information, but it's called the Principles of Water Rates, Fees, and Charges, and it's called their M1 manual. It is full of best management practices that utilities across the country use to establish their fees, charges, and system development fees. Again, as Ashley went over many times in her presentation, on the accounting side of system development fees, they are restricted funds. And again, I'll go through that even more, but you're going to hear that over and over again. And again, all we mean by that is those funds are in our reserves, but we need to remember that they can only be used for projects that increase or enlarge the capacity of our system. Only for those type of uses. They aren't for the day in, day out maintenance operation of our utility. So we'll go into that a little more, but I just wanted to remind everybody of that. System development fees. Basically, they're used to support current and future development in Cheyenne for only growth-related cost. Can be used for new water supply pipelines, water resources, and treatment capacity. It is a one-time charge. Everybody pays it once up front, and I would kind of look at it, it is your buy-in to the system. If you can just imagine all the infrastructure that's even being mentioned this morning, all of our stage 1, stage 2 treatment facilities, dams, reservoirs, everything that we have in our system, which enables us to get water to Cheyenne, that is the infrastructure that these fees are based upon. And then any anticipated improvements that we are considering, as you'll see here, in the next 5 years. And so that's how we kind of develop those fees. It is a one-time fee that is charged to everybody up front when they do develop a piece of property. And it's basically just an equitable share of growth for the necessary new infrastructure. And we spread that amongst every user within the system. Just per city ordinance, you will see that per city ordinance 4308, which is the current ordinance, or the BOPU resolution, which is number 20-20-05, You'll see there on the screen where it mentions, this resolution, approving the revised water and sewer connection fees, system development fees, pump station development fees, and related fees set by the Board of Public Utilities. You'll see there where it's been enlarged, whereas the board desires to set fees to secure an income sufficient to pay for costs associated with water and sewer installations, recover cost and reduce debt associated with water and sewer development and expansions to the city's water and sewer system, and pay for costs associated with oversizing water and sewer mains. So strictly, again, these fees with the system development fee are strictly for enlargements or oversizing of our system, which is going to improve our system and enable us to meet the requirements of future growth. There is also some legal authority that we have through state statute Title 15, Chapter 7, which there's a section there that specifically says a one-time connection fee reasonably calculated to permit recovery of proportionate share of the municipality's infrastructure costs necessary to treat, convey the water may be charged. And so this is another area that the board is entitled per state statute to be able to charge this fee. And again, those fees are typically calculated every 5 years when we do a rate analysis study. And those are done by a professional firm that specifically does that for a living for utilities in determining what those fees increases should be. Currently, we are in the process of doing a rate study and probably going to make some changes of how we calculate some things here in the future, specifically to system development fees. And I'll get into that a little bit further in a couple more slides. System development fees, typically, these are in addition, just typically some things that they would pay for. Large transmission mains, storage tanks, treatment plants, pumping and lift stations. So again, on the water side, we have what's called a pumping station in order to increase pressure in our system. A lift station is strictly on the sewer side where we have to actually lift the sewage by pumping due to maybe we can't flow by gravity to get it into our treatment facilities. So that's the difference between pumping and lift stations. Water rights and new sources. We have a lot of water rights at the board. And we are going to be going here in this next year to look at some new water sources. There's a lot of things going on with the development, possible issues with the Colorado River and just the shortages of their anticipated drought, and the continual decrease in Lake Powell and Lake Mead, the obligations that us as an upper state and the Colorado River have obligations to provide water downstream. There could be some curtailment on the Colorado River here in the next several years. That curtailment could affect our water rights that we currently have over in the Little Snake area, which is our trade water, because those waters naturally flow to the Colorado River. And so because there could be a curtailment call, those water rights could be impacted. And so those are some other things that we're looking at of what new sources we can do, what additional things we can do in our system to be continually more efficient, and being able to use existing water resources we have to possibly take care of those situations if we do have a curtailment. So that's something that's out on the horizon that we're watching very closely. Also reservoirs and dams, and then costs associated with oversized water and sewer mains. There is many times with developments within town that a development will come into town. They may need a certain water pipe size or sewer pipe size, but because the Board of Public Utility knows that there's going to be additional growth in that area, we will pay for upsizing maybe a development needs an 8-inch, and we know that that area ultimately is going to need a 12-inch in the future. We will pay for that upsizing from 8 to 12. And so we do that through the bidding process, and we pay for that difference. And that's what those upsizing costs are. And we can use our system development fees for those type of costs. Just some examples of system development fees at work, just projects that we've worked on in the past that you can kind of see. The Dry Creek Water Reclamation Facility. We have 2 water reclamation facilities, our Crow Creek facility and our Dry Creek facility. That's a picture of our Dry Creek facility there, and we've done multiple expansions out at that project site to continue to stay up with the growth of the city. Next, you can also see the Sherard water treatment plant. The Sherard water treatment plant was built in 2002, completed. It's kind of hard to believe that project is already 20 years old, but that is the state-of-the-art water treatment plant, and system development fees were used for a portion of that construction of that plant. Also, you can see our recycled water pump station. For those of you that are not aware, we do have a recycled water system in town, which we call our purple pipe, as you can see there in the picture. And that is a system that actually takes our treated wastewater effluent from our Crow Creek facility, treats it even to a secondary higher level to provide Class A recycled water that meets DEQ requirements for the state. And then that water is pumped into the city to a pond at Prairie View Golf Course, and then is distributed out into the city to provide water for golf courses, parks, cemeteries. The VA Medical Center is on recycled water, and various parks. And that is a system that we will continue in the future to expand as time and funds allow. Because that is water that we can basically use twice. And so every gallon that we save by using recycled water is a gallon that we save for future growth and not having to use potable water to irrigate facilities around town. We would thus save our potable water resources. One other thing before I go into system development fees, just roughly right now, just so everybody kind of knows, and these were in some of the numbers that Ashley had gone over, but we do, in system development fees right now, approximately have about 6.9 million on the water side and about 2.3 million on the sewer side. So those are the kind of numbers that we have. I can just tell you right now that prior to fiscal year 20, or at the end of fiscal year 20, prior to depreciation, on the water side, just for total capital assets for the water is approximately $434 million. On the sewer, that is about $164 million total capital assets prior to depreciation. So that kind of tells you the dollar amount of infrastructure that we have in the ground operational, which is required to both get our water to the city, treat it, distribute it out into the system, and then the infrastructure that we have to collect our sewage, get it to our water reclamation plants, and get that water safely treated before it's discharged back into the creek. So there's a lot of money invested in our infrastructure. And so you can see 6.9 million on the water and 2.3 million on the sewer are really pretty minor drop in the bucket when you look at the amount of dollars we have invested in those facilities. So there's no way that system development fees can pay for a lot of these upgrades that we have to do. But it is numbers that we want to try to continue to build, and probably will with the growth that is going to occur, so that we can use those fees on appropriate projects to offset some of the cost, thus saving increases that we would have to pass on to the users in the form of rates, to try to keep those rates as low as possible. So they are vital to us, but I just wanted you to understand the magnitude of difference of what we have in the ground and actually what we have on system development fees to do some of those type of upgrades. So we always use a combination of system development fees when we can, grants through the State Water Development Commission, and then also low interest rates loans through the State Land Investment Board to finance those projects. When we go to calculate system development fees, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, and I'd be glad to go over this in more depth with anybody outside this meeting if you'd like. But the way that they were calculated in our last master plan in 2013 is what they call, out of the M51 manual, a combined equity buy-in and incremental method formula. Basically what we do is you take all the total existing net plan assets, and so these are facilities that are used to get water to the city, collection system, treatment. You add all those up, and then you divide that by the total number of 3/4 inch meter equivalents. And so what we mean by that is we take every meter that we have in town, say it's a 6-inch meter, we calculate that and turn that into so many 3/4 inch equivalents. And there is meter equivalent based standard capacity ratios that are out of the AWWA M51 manual. And so we convert all of our meters back to the total number of 3/4 inch meters, okay? Once we do that, we divide that by the total existing net assets, and you get one number there on the left side of the plus signs. Then we also figure what our future net plant costs are, and those would be costs that we anticipate spending. For example, our new CIP is for 5 years, which Frank Strong is going to go over here after our break. But we take those total costs and then divide them by the future capacity 3/4 inch meter equivalents. So we take a growth rate, say, of 1% over the next 5 years, and we come up with a number of additional 3/4 inch meter equivalents. And we divide that into that future net plant costs. So those are future projects that we plan to do. We then add those two results to get our total system development fee for a 3/4 inch meter. And so that is a dollar amount then per each 3/4 inch meter. And so we basically divide all those total existing net plant assets by the number of total 3/4 inch meters, both existing and the future number. And that's how we establish our 3/4 inch system development fee. We then take that fee for a 3/4 inch and multiply it back by the capacity ratios or the meter capacity ratios to get the associated fee for 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, 6 inch, and so on, meter sizes. And that's how that is done. I put down on the bottom there just some of the numbers that were used back in 2013 when we did this. For the total existing net plan assets, that was about 265 million. The future net plan assets were about 41 million. And then the, let's see, I had the 57 on the sewer, was on the number of 3/4 inch, and then the 6,100,000 was on the sewer there. So basically I can tell you that back in 2013, when we did this, the dollar amount for a 3/4 inch meter came in at just over $10,000. That's what it was calculated at, that's what the system development fee should be for a 3/4 inch meter. At the time, I think we were in the range between $6,000 and $7,000 was our system development fee. So it was pretty evident to us at that time that we could not just make up that huge increase in one jump. So we basically did an incremental increase on 3/4 inch and 1 inch because they were the ones that were most drastically off on where we should be. And we increased those by 8% each year to help us catch up or to make up that difference. And I have had a lot of comments from people, even in the development fee, why are certain fees on the 3/4 and 1 inch each year increased by 8% when we said we've only had maybe a 3 or 4% rate increase. And that's because those were approved at that time, even through council and the governing body, to make up that shortfall over a long duration rather than hitting everybody with a large increase right out of the gate. I can tell you that basically where we're at today, as you can see on the screen that's coming up there, for a residential today, it's 8670. So I can tell you that even with the increases since 2013 to get up to the 10,000, we still have not reached that, but we are a lot closer. I will tell you that on the right there, you'll see these are some of our new system development fees, that these are preliminary numbers that we have gotten out of our new rate study. We are looking at, in the future, doing everything off of a meter basis rather on a use basis. And what we mean by that is, I think you can just kind of consider the size of hole we put in the pipe. That's probably the simplest way to look at it. And you can all understand if you put a 3/4 inch hole in a pipe or a tap in a pipe, that can get a certain amount of water. If you put a 6-inch hole in a pipe, that can get a whole different amount of water. And so we're looking at basing our system development fees more on a meter size. And so that's how we're going to probably look at things moving forward. We also are looking at getting rid of classifications like residential, commercial, and combining. It'll strictly be a system development fee based on your meter size. So you'll see there for 3/4, 1 inch, 1.5, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, 6 inch on the right side. The fees range from $95.69 clear up to $430,000. When we get over 6 inch, and I'll explain those in the next slide, we calculate large volume users, which typically are over the 6 inch size, using a different method, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I just want you to show, this is so you can see, for a single family residential right now for a 3/4, it's 8670. It's looking at, like with our new rate study, we'd go up to 9569. You can see the commercial industrial is 7630. It's going to go up to the 9569 as well. But as you go down, I'd like you to look as you go to a 1 inch. Currently right now it's 16.6 for residential. That will go to 15,940. You'll see commercial was 20,000. That would go to 15,940 as well. So there's going to be some pluses and minuses, but overall, we're trying to spread those rates out. And I would tell you, the fact that we're showing right now that our 3/4 inch is coming in at 9569, we're trying to do all we can at the board's end of how we plan our projects in the future, specifically in our 5-year capital improvement plan, to keep those costs and projects as affordable as we can, and only try to budget those projects that we see that we're going to be able to afford, that make sense, and are appropriate for our immediate future and what we see we're going to need to meet growth-wise. And so you can see now we're down to 9569, whereas back in 2013, it was up to 10,000. But we have completed a lot of those projects. And I think it just goes to show that we are trying to be conscientious cost-wise on what projects we plan for in the future. The other thing we are also going to do as well is you'll see a water pump station fee on the right side. We've decided to just combine that into the system development fee and not charge a separate water pump station fee. So that'll be something that will be taken away. When a developer comes in, they'll pay one cost. They won't pay a cost for their residential tap and a pump station fee. Everything will be combined. As well, on the multifamily there on the existing rate structure, you'll see we are going to get away from paying a fee per number of units for multifamily. Again, it is going to be based on a meter size. So if a multifamily unit requires a 2-inch meter, they are going to only pay that system development fee for a 2-inch meter. It's not going to be based on the number of units. So those are just some things we're seeing in the industry that are standardized and more common practice. And so that'll be the direction that we're going to probably lean towards in the future. So I just wanted to share those changes with you. We do the sewer the same way. Again, everybody needs to know that our sewer fees are based off of your water usage in the 3 winter months, December, January, February. That's what we base those on because that is the time that everybody is typically not irrigating. And so that's how we come up with your sewer consumption. So again, I show up here our existing rate structure for sewer and then our proposed rate structure. You can see water is maybe not as large as increases as sewer is not as large increases as the water. But again, everybody needs to remember our water system infrastructure is a lot more elaborate, a lot more cost intensive than our sewer side is. So that makes sense that those fees would be less. If you remember the assets that I shared earlier with over 400 million on the water and just 164 million on the sewer, there's a big difference in cost, and our water system is definitely more expensive than our sewer system. So again, those are the rates there you can see for our sewer. Then, as I mentioned earlier, anybody over 6-inch in size, typically we call them a large commercial or industrial user. And typically they are only commercial and industrial. Again, residential, all your multifamily typically are not going to get into sizes over 6-inch meter sizes. And so when we do it on water and sewer for what we call large commercial and industrial users, we have to look at some other criteria because typically a lot of these users have bigger impacts upon our system on the water side and our treatment capacities for both water and sewer. And you'll see there that on the water side, we basically have to get information from the person coming in that wants to develop or a new commercial or industrial user. And so we work with them ahead of time to develop their system development fee. And we look at their base demand amount. We look at their maximum day demand as well as their peak hour demand. And the reason that we have to look at all these is because they can have a large impact on our system. For example, maybe their peak hour demand. We can't not pay attention to that because if there's a certain time during the day that they have a peak hour demand, we have to make sure that our system is capable of keeping up with that demand. And so we look at a lot of those numbers very closely to make sure that our system is able to maintain and supply the water that is needed. So their fee is based a little differently because their demand upon our system is much greater and has a much greater impact on how we operate. Same thing on the sewer side. There is some things on some of our processes at our plants that we have to be very careful of. And so you'll see there's what we call BOD, or biological oxygen demand. Those are constituents within their sewer flows, what they may produce out of their facility. And so we look at what those are. We look at their wastewater volume. And then we also look at what's called total suspended solids, or TSS. And those are just different water quality parameters in their sewer flow that we analyze, and they are billed accordingly by what those quantities and quality of water are that they are discharging. And we work with our water reclamation group to actually assess those fees, and then we come up with a system development fee for them. So they do not follow the same procedure as on the previous slide based on meter equivalents. They're more on their demand and their water quality conditions that they discharge to our system. So a little different, but I just wanted to go over with that. It takes a little more time to determine those costs. With that, I think I'll open it up to any questions anybody may have, and we'll stop there. So I've had a couple questions and I kind of answer, and we can look in that. One was just a comment about what the mayor had said on the system development fees be based on lot house size or number of bathrooms. The thing that we need to look on that and be careful, it's easy to say, because a house is a certain size. Again, it comes back, if you want to look at the size of tap that we put into the main and its ability to draw water. So just because a house is a certain size, if in the future they enlarge that house, all these fees have to be based on the amount of water that could be taken out of a 3/4 inch meter size. So that is something we can look at, but again, I think it makes sense. And in talking with our consultant, we see that it's probably best to base those on a meter size rather than start looking at number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, because that can always change. And so that's something we have to be careful of. We've seen that on developments here in town where we may have certain meter sizes that they've put in. They've paid a system development fee, but the size meter they have put in has enabled them to expand far greater than what they paid their system development fee on, because it was based more on a maybe number of units. And I'm thinking specifically with multifamily. And so they've been able to expand because of their meter size, and that additional usage is not been able to be recouped by the board because the meter allowed them to take a lot more water than they were originally charged for their system development fee. So that's why we want to go to a meter-based fee basis. So we can look into that. See, one other one was, can I say something about the 1% growth over 5 years? I think right now we have, you remember, Ashley, what we've put in for the growth on the on our rate study? I think it's slightly over 1% because that's what we've seen the trend in the past. That may or may not be accurate, because if we do get some of the growth with things that we see that are coming into town, that may be light, but I think we have right now put in just over 1% for a growth rate. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see, I'm reading other questions here. So yeah, one other thing just to mention, last year with fees in general and rate increases, due to what happened with COVID, the board, management staff, as well as our board of directors felt very strongly that last year was a year that we felt we did not want to impose any rate increases to our customers. So last year we chose not to do any rate increases to kind of help our customers and users with the impacts that they were already experiencing from COVID. So we did not do any rate increases last year. This coming year, we will be looking at rate increases that would be effective in January. I think that is something important. It is something the board is very careful to watch and observe, and we just felt like last year the best and the right thing to do was to not add any additional rate increases. And so I just wanted to bring that up, that was something we did last year. Another question was roughly the percentage of the total BOPU revenue that was lost with the refinery changes. And it looks like it was several $1 million below both the water and sewer, for both water and sewer combined. I think the refinery made up about 15% of our revenue, approximately. So it was a pretty substantial hit to us. I think Ashley mentioned earlier in her comments, it was approximately this year we're going to be roughly 2 million, maybe a little over that, short in revenue, both water and sewer, due to the impact of the changes the refinery is making going to renewable diesel. So I also had another question. What will be the effect of upgrading of nuclear missiles at the F.E. Warren? And that will bring on a lot of work, people into the community. We are meeting regularly with the city on what's called the EUL, or the enhanced use lease, out on the base property at the intersection of Missile Drive, or Happy Jack Road, and I-25. And there will be increases in that, not only on housing, but just on the number of people that are going to be brought into the community. I don't know that we have a number on what that increase will be, but I can guarantee you it is going to bring in jobs and revenue to our community, to the county. And there will be additional housing units built out there on that piece of property. There is a considerable shortfall right now in housing units in town. And so that's what a lot of the developers, combined with the mayor's office and the chamber, are working very, very hard to try to provide additional housing options for people. As the mayor mentioned earlier in his presentation, or his discussion, was that's a key priority, is to try to get affordable housing here in Cheyenne. And so there is going to be an increase housing here that's going to be need to be built here in the next couple years prior to the EUL work or the base upgrading of the nuclear missiles starting. Great questions. I appreciate people's input. Any other questions before we take a 15-minute break? Hopefully I answered everybody's questions. Again, if there's any additional questions you may have, you can continue to send those in. We'll be monitoring those and we can answer them at the end if we need to. Anything else before we take a 15-minute break? I don't see anything else coming in. So with that, why don't we take a 15-minute break? We're about 25 minutes ahead of schedule, which is good. That'll hopefully create more time for this afternoon. I show 9:33 right now, so why don't we get back together at 9:50? So at 9:50, we'll start live again, and our next presentation will be by Frank Strong, who is our Engineering and Water Resource Manager, and it is going to be going over our 5-year capital improvement plan. So again, we thank you for your time this morning. Hopefully you can remain with us throughout the rest of the morning, but we appreciate your participation, and we'll see you in about 15 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Frank Strong. I show it is 9:50, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today, I'm going to talk about the 5-year capital plan, kind of summarize, what we were doing in the past and what we're going to do now. So you have to bear with me. So here I show kind of our 5-year capital plan that we first put together going into the rate study. And you show it's a total of about $65 million of work. This was trying to bring together all resources, including the master plan, new projects that had developed, other challenges that we've had to come up and address. And this was kind of, our base point. And then as we submitted this to the rate study, that's when everything started to get interesting. We had COVID, we had the news from Holly Frontier, and all those challenges come up. So staff got together and we really started talking about these projects. And we have some situations where we've developed new and better solutions that were a more economical choice for us. And then we do have projects we had to postpone and delay to be able to stay within our available funds. So I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights on some of the major projects. So this is where we started. And this is where we ended up. And you can see we've reduced the capital project list for the next 5 years by $35 million. So it's a pretty significant reduction. And I'm going to talk about some of the highlights. One of the projects that we have slated in here is the Crystal Bypass. It was included in the 2013 master plan. We did have to revise the cost up to about $3 million, but it's going to allow us to construct a bypass line from the stage 2 pipeline that discharges into Crystal, take it around Crystal and tie in downstream and allow us to deliver 14 million gallons a day to Sherard in the event that we have to take Crystal Reservoir out of service. And this could be, for any number of reasons. We have to do work on the outlet works, or we have to fix issues with water quality in Crystal Reservoir, or so on and so forth. I'm going to have to back up real quick and start a different presentation. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. I had 2 things pop up at once. One of the projects we postponed that was included in the master plan was to do an expansion to the flock basins out at Sherard. Currently, we have 3 flock basins, and is the limitation on how much water we can produce out of Sherard. Right now, with 3 flock basins, we can produce 32 MGD. We're kind of evaluating that, doing some analysis on how hard we can push the filters or the flock basin. But at some point, we're going to have to do an expansion to the flock basin. But with the reduction in demands from Holly Frontier and the reduction of flows that we've seen in the summer due to water conservation, this is a project we can postpone until it's needed. But as Brad mentioned earlier, we do have a 20-year-old water treatment plant, which is hard for some of us to believe. So we've started to have to do rehabs at Sherard. These weren't necessarily all called out in the master plan, but we've had to do rehabs to the flock basin. So you can see here's a picture where we've recoated the walls and are rebuilding the paddle that are within there to create the coagulation needed. Following by that, we've had to start rehabbing our filters. Our filter bays, as I said, are 20 years old. We've had some issues on the under drains that you can see here that have required some maintenance, and then once again redoing the coating system on the concrete walls so that we can operate another 20 years. One of the areas that we did have to do some reduction and postponements on is rehabs. This includes both the distribution system rehabs, the raw water system rehabs, and some of the well rehabs. This is just one area that we just didn't have adequate funding to be able to do our typical goals and have had to cut back. The picture on the right shows some of the directional drilling that we started using on our water rehabs to allow these projects to come in at a lower cost and maximize the benefit to the board. Another area that we've had to postpone projects, and it's not necessarily due to cost, is in regards to our reuse system. The slide on the right kind of shows the existing piping for our reuse system where we go up to North Park, up to the ball fields, so on and so forth. In the master plan, it was slated to get reuse water to Mylar and Smalley Park, and then up to Central McCormick area. And as part of that project, we'd have to increase the capacity of our high service pumps at Crow Creek. We've had to postpone this project simply because we no longer have the capacity. Holly Frontier, who has reduced their wastewater flow significantly, all that water went to our Crow Creek wastewater reclamation facility, and that's where we produce reuse water. With the loss of that water, we don't have an adequate supply to increase our demand on the reuse system. So we're going to have to postpone this until, 2 things happen. One, we have adequate flow at Crow Creek to produce the reuse water, and we have the demand for it. A new item we've kind of added to our list of projects is starting to set aside some money to help with future water rights. We've all talked about the drought, possible curtailment. We see that we need to kind of do more to diversify our water right profile or portfolio so that we can address drought and curtailment in new and creative ways so that we can continue to meet the demand that our citizens and our customers put on the water system. This project, currently out at Sherard, we do all our disinfection with chlorine gas, which has been a standard practice for many years. The issues with chlorine gas is it does have some safety issues and some challenges associated with it. So we are hoping in the future, we've kind of delayed this a little bit, of converting Sherard from chlorine gas disinfection to using sodium hypochlorite and be generating that on site. So we did budget for the next coming year to kind of do a study to say, can we convert Sherard to on-site on-site chlorine generation, and can we reuse the existing facilities at Swan Ranch and Round Top and move those to Sherard to minimize our costs. So there'll be more to come on this. Another project that we have delayed that wasn't in our horizon was addressing the spillway at New North Crow. Currently, the primary spillway at New North Crow is undersized. Don't hold me on these numbers, but I believe it currently has a capacity of 200 CFS, and it needs to have a capacity of 2,000 CFS. So as part of the municipal storage project, it was identified that this does need to be replaced, but also the study identified that if we were to raise the dam at New North Crow, we could gain another 500 acre-feet of storage. So that is very advantageous to be able to increase storage. So we're going to be working on that in the future years, but currently we've had to delay it just to stay within our means. Another project that's been eliminated that was identified in the master plan was to build a pipeline and booster station to allow us to get water from the federal well field, which is the well field clear north of town, to Sherard. Currently, that well field can only flow to Round Top, and is the reason we have a chlorine generation system there at Round Top is to disinfect that water prior to it going into Round Top tank. We were very fortunate that staff was able to identify that there was available head capacity in the federal well field and that the installation of a single valve would allow water to flow to Sherard. We have installed that valve. It has been successful. The last item that has to be addressed is the one downside to it is it does impact 4 of our existing wells. We're going to have to go in there and upsize the pumps and probably the VFD drives and motors to allow them to continue to function properly. But that's probably a cost of $160,000 as opposed to a $5 million pipeline and booster station. So this was a win for us in minimizing our costs. Another item that we've delayed a few years is updating the master plan. We're currently trying to resolve our rate study, and with some of the workload we have now, we feel this would be more appropriate to attack in fiscal year 25. So just one of those things that we are trying to accommodate all the workload and allow us to properly handle this project. Another area that we've been able to reduce cost because of staff efforts is at all of our facilities, we have an aging Scada system in regards to the RTUs, the PLCs, and the radios that we use to communicate between all our facilities. Staff was able to identify a solution where we can use, build it ourselves and use off-the-shelf components to greatly reduce the cost. We're talking in the realm of $1 million or so a year down to $250,000 a year. And we'll talk about this more as part of the engineering group's presentation. That kind of summarizes some of the impacts on the water side and the projects we have reduced or eliminated. On the wastewater side, once again, this is representing all the projects we knew of, identified via the master plan or through staff identification because of problems that existed. And you can see that it was a cost of $62.5 million. We did the same exercise we did on the water side, and we're able to reduce that down to $30 million. So once again, over a $30 million reduction. As we talked about before, some of these projects were limited for various reasons and some weren't. One of the things that we're keeping in there is to convert the Crow Creek Water Reclamation Facility to an IFAS system. Currently, it's in a, got to remember the terminology, MBBR, which is mixed bed biofilm reactor, which essentially water comes in, we have a bunch of stuff floating in there that the microbes or the bacteria and everything grow on. They do the digestion or the treatment of the wastewater, and it gets goes out as effluent. Converting to IFAS really isn't too complicated. It primarily composes of adding in a activated sludge system where we take the sludge that we get out of our clarifiers that's got more of these bugs in it and they're concentrated, and we return it to the front of the train, so to speak, so that it's more efficient at digesting and processing that wastewater into clean effluent. One item we were able to postpone through staff efforts is it was identified in the master plan and some of our models that the Crow Creek interceptor for the basin was running out of capacity. Staff, the O&M group, installed a lot of flow meters and flow DARs within the system to allow us to do a better analysis of what capacity we have left in our system, and has really allowed us to identify the bottlenecks that we need to monitor. And we still have some capacity. We'll see how fast it gets used up, but we were able to postpone a major study to try to figure out what to do until we see our demands or our flows go up higher. Unfortunately, we did have to postpone some projects. One project we had to postpone was the Dry Creek Water Reclamation Facility, the biosolids drying facility. Right now, we do have a project going on where we're replacing our existing centrifuges with screw presses to better dewater our sludge. This project will be needed in the future to allow us to continue to meet our Class A biosolids rating. Currently, we are allowed to do a 2-year drying cycle, which is not the norm, but there are concerns that regulations will come through that we're not going to be able to store biosolids on site that long, and I'll be allowed to have 2 years to achieve the rating or the proper treatment. So this would allow us to get down to a single summer for biosolids treatment. Another project that is still on the horizon is out at the Crow Creek Water Reclamation Facility, is to expand the existing clarifiers that I've kind of circled in green here. Currently, the existing clarifiers are not deep enough that we have operational issues at times because of the depth and the reaction with water, or excuse me, with sunlight and winter operations. So this is still on the horizon for us to do and is needed. I mistakenly forgot to add a questions slide at the end of this presentation. So I do believe I have one Q&A sitting out there. I haven't read it yet, but I will answer any questions anybody has. I do have one question from Mayor Collins. Would the projected new data centers be able to make up the difference from Holly Frontier? And referring specifically to the recycled water program growth. Currently, no. The data centers do a good job of using water in the summertime, but however, most of that water does evaporate away through their cooling process, so they are discharging into the Crow Creek Basin, but currently it's not enough to offset the 1 to 2 million gallons a day that Holly Frontier previously had discharged to the sewer system. Are there any other questions in regards to this presentation? Okay, not seeing any further questions, I can release my presentation for the next presenter.
Hello. We are going to take the time to have a brief update for each division, and we're starting today with administration. The administration division is made up of the accounting department, customer service, information technology, meter information, safety and security. Aaron is our support staff, and the water conservation and public relations position. Our presentation will share with you some of the big projects that we currently have going at this time, and the project managers will each take some time to share with you their status and the impacts to the board. Our first project and presentation will be done by Jason Land, Safety and Security, who will review our risk and resilience.
Okay, sorry folks for the delay. We'll start this over. I guess we had a mic issue. So on October 23rd of 2018, America's Water Infrastructure Act was signed into law at the federal government. This law requires any utility with over 3,300 people as customers to develop and update their risk assessments and emergency response plans. This law also requires certain components of the utility system to be looked at and addressed in their assessments. To give you some background, the Public Health, Security and Bioterrorism Preparedness Response Act of 2002 was the first time where utilities were told at the federal level they need to create emergency response plans. So this new act passed into law in 2018 just wants utilities to update, look at different assessments and risk and update those ERPs. This will be on a 5-year cycle. So what we're going through right now is we did complete successfully the risk assessments. I did certify the Board of Public Utilities as successfully completed with the EPA. That was before the December 31st, 2020 date. Now that we did that, we have 6 months from the certification date to update our emergency response plan, which we're currently in the process of doing that. We have a large group of staff from all divisions involved in that, and I appreciate their efforts. And at this point, we have to have that done by June 30th of 2021. Once we get this submitted and complete, this will become a 5-year cycle. So moving forward, every 5 years, we'll have to kind of go through the same process. Thank you.
Next up, we have Billy Nifong, who is our customer service supervisor to review our utility billing and permitting project.
Good morning. We're going to be upgrading our current system, HTE, to Tyler, first with permitting and code enforcement, cashiering, and central property. These modules are set to go live in September of 2021. Tyler permitting will house our TAP applications. It will streamline entering permits, inspections, and taking payments. Code enforcement will allow water conservation and water reclamation violations to be entered onto our system versus utilizing spreadsheets. It will also allow us to thoroughly document each step, and it will be a more efficient way to track violations. Central property will be integrated with GIS, which will offer us more current data for permits. Utility billing is in the beginning stages and is set to go live January of 2022. The system will reduce manual entry, helping to increase accuracy and efficiency. Reports will be easier to access for staff and for customers requesting information as well. We will also have our new customer self-service site, which will include more functionality and information than our current portal offers for our customers. Munis Mobile will allow staff in the field to access work orders directly on a handheld device versus using paper. They will be able to enter information and update work orders while in the field. Tyler Cashiering will be used for both general and utility billing, and it will integrate with our current financial software. We will also have the opportunity to engage another payment processor for all credit card and online payments, and we're in the process of getting proposals from 3 different companies. Thank you.
And if you remember last year at our goals and planning, we took the opportunity to go through the efficient utility management system and identify several things that we wanted to focus on in the following years. Billy's project to upgrade our utility billing and permitting is an attribute of our operational and optimization goal, which is automated and smart systems to include operational technology and information. I now would like to present to you or introduce to you Mark Mercer, who is our IT supervisor, and he will review his upgrades to Neptune 360.
Good morning. So one of our division's initiatives is to complete the transition from our traditional meter reading process, where we currently read meters that are collected monthly, and the readings are used primarily to bill for our water consumption, to an advanced meter reading infrastructure, or AMI, which allows the board to collect meter readings using remote collectors or gateways that are spread out across the city. These gateways communicate with water meters throughout the city several times each hour to collect readings, monitor for leaks, high consumption, reverse flow, tampering, or even damage to the meter. The data is then collected and forwarded to the board's computer servers, where it's stored and used for billing of our customers, and it's used by others to manually review the data for leaks or other consumption issues. The board currently has 4 of these gateways installed that can communicate with nearly 3/4 of our meters. We also anticipate installing additional gateways in the future to support new development and collect meter data from existing areas that current gateways aren't able to reach. By leveraging a cloud-based software platform like Neptune 360 with our AMI system, the board will be able to turn this information into action and proactively notify our customers of water leaks or high consumption. It will also provide our customer service and our meter technicians with historical data needed to troubleshoot customer questions or concerns about their consumption. Our water conservation specialists will also gain the ability to analyze consumption to look at usage trends by date, time, and even geographic area within the city to assist them in developing a defensible conservation plan. Finally, an additional feature of Neptune 360 will allow customers to access their own account data and create alerts to notify them of potential leaks, high consumption, or water usage when they're gone. This could be especially useful while the property owner is on vacation or the house is vacant. At this time, we are still using an on-premise meter reading collection system, but we are excited about the future benefits of migrating to the Neptune 360 cloud-based platform. We are currently in negotiations with Neptune on a software as a service agreement, and we anticipate going live sometime this spring or early this summer. Thank you.
The next project that we would like to discuss and review is the rate study. As we've mentioned several times in different presentations this morning, we are currently undergoing a rate study. We started our rate study in March of 2020. Our initial steps were to provide and review our construction work in progress, and updates were made, as Frank discussed during his presentation. This review helped to revise the construction work in progress plan in order to reduce the overall rate impact to our community. The next step was reviewing our system development fees and look at the possibility of moving to a system impact fee versus a system impact fee per class per industry. We recently had the opportunity to go over the cost of service structure option. This is a very complex process which provides good information, however, could cause a complex rate structure to our customers. It would increase rates with significant differences between the categories such as residential, commercial, industrial, in-city, out-of-city, etc. But is definitely something for us to consider. The next steps in this process is to establish our rate structures. And currently, we have a tiered rate structure for residential. We have classes of commercial, residential, and industrial. We have to decide if this is still the right direction for the board and our community, and consider all options available, such as cost of service, potentially a different rate structure, or changing some of our rate classes. In fiscal year 2022, we have chosen to move forward with our historical practice of a standard rate increase across all classes, and we are looking at and have budgeted at a 5% for both the water and sewer side. We hope to have this project or study completed later this summer. I did not provide a Q&A slide following this. However, administration would be glad to answer any questions that you may have specifically to our presentation. We do have a lot more projects, priorities, and tasks in the pipe. However, we only presented some of the bigger ones to you today. Not seeing any questions, we will move forward with our presentation. It's my honor to introduce to you Human Resources, Kathy Kellner and Rocio Tripp.
Okay, well, thank you, administration team. You provided a lot of great information. Hello and welcome to the Human Resource Update in the Annual Goals and Planning Presentation. Rocio Tripp, Human Resource Specialist, and I, Kathy Kellner, will be presenting. Of course, the stars of our department are the 5 divisions and all the highly skilled staff who perform and provide support towards our very important and essential responsibility of keeping the city of Cheyenne supplied with clean and safe drinking water and to treat wastewater. I will begin with providing an overview of some of the Human Resource Department responsibilities. Recruitment. You may all remember that in 2019-2020, we were heavily recruiting due to the voluntary retirement offer made in FY 2020. Following January of 2020, recruitment slowed, and then due to COVID-19 and concerns for revenue, management placed a hiring freeze on 5 open positions. Onboarding. New hires go through a full-day orientation covering employee handbook, personnel policies, and benefits. We add them to the payroll HR system and enroll new hires in our benefit plans. Offboarding, exit interview, review final pay and benefit end dates, enroll in continuation of benefits if applicable, or terminate benefits. And we also terminate from our payroll and HR system. Benefits administration. The BOPU has an excellent benefit package that includes health, dental, vision insurances, life insurance, long-term disability, accident, and critical illness insurances, and the Wyoming Retirement System pension plan and deferred compensation plans. Human Resources works with our brokers to shop markets, provides employee education on each plan, conducts open enrollments, and utilizes provider portals to perform enrollments, terminations, changes in coverage, and employee personal information. Compensation administration. Human Resources conducts an annual salary analysis and provides board members with recommendations for changes to plan. Annually, we participate in several quality salary surveys. We provide management and all staff with education on our salary plan and assist management with salary placement within our salary plan. Employment law, FMLA. This is pretty much a manual process that requires meeting with staff to provide required paperwork, follow-up to ensure medical notifications have been received. We track all FMLA time and return to work statuses. HR also oversees compliance with wage and hour, workplace harassment, EEO, and personnel policies. Employee relations, being present and available to answer questions for employees about their employment with the BOPU. Our wellness program. Our wellness committee consists of Candace Schuessler, Rocio Tripp, Chris Russell, Nate Kaufhold, Linda Gunter, and Aaron Barbary. HR oversees the implementation of wellness programs. For example, the preventative care program that requires an annual physical or visit to a medical provider, annual flu shot clinic, and chemistry health screen profile blood draw. We assist in the development and implementation of challenges. For example, we are currently in a financial challenge. We have 23 participants. This program provides financial education classes to include education on the Wyoming Retirement System Pension Plan and the BOPU's deferred compensation plans. We are also currently in a fitness challenge, and we have 22 participants. We've worked with Gold's Gym, and we've provided a MyZone heart monitor to all participants. These monitors sync with a smartphone to track workouts. Participants are challenged to get 1,300 MEPs, which stands for MyZone effort points, per month. David Cole has been nominated as Team Fitness Motivator. David set up a team chat through the MyZone app. Participants can receive encouragement and motivation from other participants, and this has created fun and enthusiasm for the group. HR tracks all staff completion of requirements and awards health insurance discounts and time off incentives. Employee newsletter. The BOPU Water Blotter newsletter has greatly improved communication and recognition throughout the board. In addition to what I have just covered, 2020 has provided human resources with changes, challenges, and opportunities for better efficiency and improvements. Tyler Munis. A big change for HR is the Tyler Munis payroll and human resource software implementation. HR spent numerous hours in training and on the phone with support to troubleshoot concerns and find solutions. Payroll went live in October 2020. HR will be accepting additional responsibilities by performing most all data entry into Munis payroll HR system. These responsibilities include data entry into the system for new hires, terminating employees, input salary changes, deduction changes, and personal status changes. Munis allows us to store documents within the employee record. Therefore, we are scanning hard copies, yet we are also maintaining and filing hard copies in each employee personnel file. As of yet, we have not seen any operational optimization, OO, but are hoping with gained knowledge and experience and implementation of the recruitment package, increased efficiencies will come. In March of 2020, unexpectedly, a pandemic bounced into our lives, bringing with it many challenges, as you know. COVID-19, March and April of 2020 were spent researching the CARES Act, determining compliance, and learning about COVID-related workplace best practices. We provided some employees the opportunity to work from home for a while. To date, the board has recorded 14 positive employee cases and numerous close contact and quarantine orders. Thankfully, all employees have recovered and are back to work. Managers and supervisors are challenged to ensure that their divisions are staffed appropriately to complete essential functions. I am happy to report that our great and dedicated team has taken on the COVID-19 challenge and have not missed a step in providing quality water and wastewater services to our citizens. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Rocio.
Good morning. My name is Rocio Tripp, and as Kathy mentioned, I am the HR specialist with the Board of Public Utilities. As has been shared, we have had many exciting changes in the Human Resources Department. In addition to our new Tyler system, board-wide, we have also participated in the migration, modification, and publication of the old and new BOPU web pages. If you have had the chance to visit our new BOPU website, you will notice a difference in the layout and icons on the website. As the HR department, our contribution has and continues to be the career opportunities page. Personally, this to me was the most exciting as we were able to continue to advertise the position, description, and salary, but now the applicant is able to download and complete a fillable application without having to print it. Once completed, they are then able to attach to an email to send their application directly to us without the necessity of having to print the application, handwrite it, scan it, attach it to an email, and then send it to HR. This very exciting addition has not only been a benefit for HR, but more so for the applicant who at times may not have access to a printer and/or is looking to submit a legible, neat, and professional application. Updating, maintaining, and publishing the announcements on this career opportunities page is a continued process for the HR department. Moving on to our other new addition, the Clearinghouse. Clearinghouse is a national database of all Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, CDL, drug and alcohol violations so that employers can query the system for previous testing histories before hiring a driver. The Clearinghouse is a tool that FMCSA employers and prospective employers will use to identify drivers who are prohibited from operating a commercial motor vehicle based on DOT drug and alcohol program violations and ensure that such drivers receive the required substance abuse evaluation and treatment before operating a commercial motor vehicle on public roads. Specifically, the drug and alcohol program violation information maintained in the Clearinghouse will enable employers to identify drivers who commit a drug or alcohol program violation while working for another employer, but who subsequently fail to inform a potential or new employer as is required by current regulations. This new database is a beneficial tool that has been added to our toolbox to ensure that we continue to hire and employ individuals who keep our community safe. And I'll be handing it over to Kathy, who will be sharing our goals.
Thank you, Rocio. So 2020 has been a year of surprises and transition. In the coming year, our goals will be to incorporate our new responsibilities and maximize our new payroll and HR software to find efficiencies so that we can find further ways to support our entire team.
Thank you, Kathy. And now we would like to extend an invitation for questions if there are any at this time. With the conclusion of our presentations and no questions at this time, we would like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for your support of the HR department during what has been a wonderful and interesting year. Thank you so much.
So my name is Bryce Dorr. I'm the Capital Projects Supervisor. I'm going to be speaking about an operational optimization project that engineering, O&M, and our inspection crews all had a part in. So we'll dive right in. So one of the processes of reviewing a development project is called the engineering plan review. This is hosted through the city, and what I'm going to explain first is the legacy process. So what happens is a design firm submits an engineering plan set to the city, and the city hosts that review in a program called Enterprise. Now within Enterprise, historically, BOPU had multiple reviewers that would comment on each plan set. So each one of those reviewers would then take the project, download it, and save it into a unique location. So we would have multiple projects being housed in different places, or the same project being housed in multiple locations across our servers. And then each person would go through and essentially make comments from a plan review and convert those comments into these really fun novels that were good to read, very complex to call out sheet numbers and stationing. This was very challenging and time consuming both on our end as well as on the developers, engineers end to kind of make sense of what this written language meant in terms of the drawings that they provided us. So essentially every time that we would make a comment, it requires multiple rounds of review to get a plan set that can be approved. Now, historically, what would happen was if you look on the left side, the review number calls out kind of first review, second review, third review. And the way that the city operated this process was only the people who made review comments in review 1 would get included in review 2. Now, that was a challenging thing to overcome because a lot of times things change where you might not have commented it on review 1, but would like to look at it in number 2. And then just a lot of inconsistencies, as you can see here. Folks who are involved in 2 or in 3, and those who weren't in 3 weren't in 2. A very convoluted mess at times. So once there was an approved plan set, that plan set would need to go through DEQ for permitting. This was typically a 1 to 4 week, up to 8 weeks at times, depending on DEQ's staffing review that would be added onto the timeline for any project. So from there, DEQ would issue their permit, and once there was a permit, then BOPU could hold a pre-construction meeting. So that was the legacy process, and through a lot of work, like I said, between capital projects, inspection, and O&M, we came up with kind of what our current process and maybe a little bit of what will happen in the future. So again, it's still housed in Enterprise, but what we have done is reduce all these multiple reviewers into a single account that IT set up an email address that allows multiple people to be notified when a new project comes in. So now BOPU only comments on one review for each project. Many of you are also doing here, we're converting into Sharepoint. And this, again, took a lot of coordination and iterations to come up with a system that worked, but big kudos to Inspection, who set up their portion of this development capital projects to really work for both their needs on the construction end as well as the needs on the design review end. So on the main page, we've broken it out into preliminary, active, and complete projects. Preliminary meaning anything that's designed or in design or pipe dream type projects. Active meaning actually in construction, and complete, I think, is pretty well understood. So the other thing you'll notice here is a folder template, and what they've done there is set up a project template that essentially can show all of the files that are needed. So within that template, you see project name, that it's a development project, a permit number. Right now, that's a DEQ number. In the future, that may change. And then a reference to the D area, which many of us are used to. So within that template folder, you can see that all of these folders are laid out so that there's consistency from project to project. And it goes all the way down to the forms level for each project that would include the necessary files throughout the life of the project. So in addition to that, Inspection also came up with a set of guidelines for naming files. France is doing a very good job of holding us all accountable when we may not follow the rules, which is a challenging transition, but I think we are getting better. So one of the other improvements to our process is that we have implemented a program called Bluebeam, which has a studio function, which allows multiple users to comment on the same PDF file simultaneously. So what we have done is assigned color codes to different users to make comments within the file. So for example, orange is capital projects, red is inspection, development specialist is purple, and blue was O&M. So you can see that each one of us can see the other's comments as we're going. So we're not overlapping or contradicting each other's comments. So in addition to that, we're meeting once a week to review these comments so that if there are contradictions or uncertainties, that we're all getting on the same page before we submit the plan back to the city. And the way that we're doing that is we are saving these files. So you can see this is how we would download it from review and make a comment. So you can see that this is very well organized in terms of the naming convention and the different review numbers all in one spot. And then we'll take that file, and rather than writing it out in words, we just attach the PDF. So it is much more streamlined on our end, on the city's end, as well as for the engineers that are reviewing those comments and trying to make sense of what we're asking them to do. So again, this would typically go to DEQ for permitting. We are currently working through a process called Delegated Authority, in which BOPU enters an agreement with DEQ, which essentially says that DEQ is giving the BOPU the authority to issue construction permits for these projects. So again, this is an effort to streamline the process. Essentially, it would go from an approved plan set to a pre-construction meeting. And then once all of the pre-construction issues are taken care of, BOPU would issue a permit directly, and that essentially would give them the notice to proceed. So this is something that has been asked for from development community for many years, and we see that that could save projects anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks. So with that, that kind of calls out our transition there from legacy to current future process on the engineering plan review.
Okay, thanks, Bryce.
My name is Jeff Foreman. I'm the GIS supervisor, and today I'm going to be discussing asset management. Asset management is an ongoing program to help divisions manage our systems more effectively through procedural implementations and a culture that we've created. Rather than discussing each individual optimization that we've implemented over the last year, I'm going to discuss the culture that we're promoting here at the board to implement. It's a pyramid approach, so each layer kind of builds on the one below it to support a goal of developing problem solving. So our philosophy is the foundational layer, and we're committed to a long-term philosophy. We want long-term solutions that eliminate firefighting and eliminate impulse reactions. Short-term can be exhausting, chasing fires, putting out problems, increases frustration, and doesn't make any improvements. So committing to long-term solutions builds sustainability, and that's our goal. We're building that on a data-driven approach. So everything that we're doing, we're collecting data in the field through mobile technologies, web technologies that we provide to our staff so that they can collect qualitative data as well as quantitative data that we can use to analyze and make decisions from. We want to confirm our theories with proof, and so we need that data to make decisions. And then it leads to this approach of finding defects, eliminating waste, and creating value. So if we follow a value-added philosophy, we're creating efficiency. We then use an approach to discover problems that pop up, defects that are introduced. We assess those. We make a root cause investigation to find what's actually at fault. We develop countermeasures. We implement those, and then we document everything. We want to avoid band-aid solutions. We're again striving for long-term. And it's all built on the premise of continuous improvement. So we're relentlessly chasing perfection. Perfection may not be achievable, but we want to maintain the mentality that we can be the best. And the pursuit of perfection leads to the excellence. So everything that we do is a process. We don't want to just make, again, these gut reactions or knee-jerk reactions. We want to follow a process. So in GIS, to implement solutions for divisions, we're following a design, develop, test, deploy, and review process. This is the development of every application that we put out, and it involves all of our staff to do, and it's repeatable. So if something pops up, anyone wants to make an improvement, we follow a process to do it. Processes are also documented, so everything can become standardized. Once it's standardized, then it can be analyzed for improvement, and then it just follows the process again. Processes are also teachable. They can be verified, and they're repetitive. So you can repeat a process consistently. Our goal is to create flow. We want to be boring. We want to avoid surprises. So we're putting together processes to make routines for our crews, for our staff, for our plants. And eventually we want to combine all of those processes into this ultimate goal of autonomous maintenance, to where our staff run on procedure, nothing is a surprise, everything becomes predictable. This is all built from people. So people are our most valuable asset. We have a team approach, everyone's included. We don't want silos, we don't want individuals. So an approach that we have is it's not my system or your system, it's our system. And we encourage our staffs to become experts in their systems. We want to champion those initiatives and share all of the knowledge that everyone learns in order to develop the redundancy needed to support all of the foundations below it. We're always learning, we're always looking to grow. We want to develop internal solutions because we are the experts of our own systems. So we look to the outside, we look to the industry, we look to consultants, but ultimately we come back to the team, we consult each other, and then we implement our own solutions and become the expert of our own system. This all leads to problem solving. We want to develop an organization of individuals and processes built around a philosophy that solves problems. We want to use analytical thinking. We want to use the data to create the experts to solve the problems. We pilot solutions in-house. We test those solutions, and then we execute internally. We share that knowledge amongst ourselves that supports the culture. And then if we need to, there's a principle that we call go see for yourself. So this is one where if we're behind a computer screen or we're looking at data and we don't understand what's happening in a treatment plant or out in the field, we have to go see it for ourselves and be part of the team in order to do that. And this is all going back to those foundational layers. So some challenges that we have coming up are keeping up with new deployments. So we've implemented for O&M, our water and sewer systems. We're currently working on implementations for treatment plants, reclamation plants, redeveloping solutions for our source of supply and well systems, as well as supporting all of the processes that are currently in production in all of the systems. So we want to, again, repeat the process so that we're always optimizing and following this idea of continuous improvement. One of the biggest challenges that's going to be part of that is resource constraints among all divisions. So staffing and budgetary constraints. And the pyramid supports us finding solutions that are efficient and cost effective. And we believe we can use this approach to continue and develop this program. So if anyone has any questions, I think they'll be at the end. So I will pass it to Carrie Chapman.
Well, good morning, everybody. Just want to wake you up a little bit, break the monotony. Let's see if I can get this thing going here. So as you heard from Frank's presentation earlier today, we are updating our Scada system a little bit, specifically with our remote terminal units, our RTUs. Now, RTU is the device that communicates with our remote sites like wells and pump stations. So you might ask, why are we doing this? Well, I count my days within the board, not by days, months, or years, but by decades. And some of this equipment predates me, so it's getting old. And it's not really supported anymore. The manufacturer no longer makes the modules we need, no longer updates the software. And so we're left to source in different ways for our spare parts. Things like eBay. Did you hear that? I'm sure those of you that know Floyd can imagine what he just did when I said eBay. Oh man, that hurts. Well, even with eBay, I'm not able to get all the parts that I need. There's something called a landline modem that we just simply can't find. And so we're living off the spare parts that we have, but once they're gone, they're gone. Our existing system uses some proprietary communications. We only have one vendor that can really support us. So that's an issue for us. But it also is a little bit hard to program. The logic is a little circuitous. We're going to come back to esoteric and circuitous here in a minute. This is a picture of an existing RTU up at Granite. It's a pretty good system. It's been very reliable for us. But if you look on this picture on the right, see anything odd about that? Yeah, see that bulge on that battery? Oh, yeah. Thanks, Frank. Frank's giving me a little better pointer. Yeah, see that? That's because that power supply was overcharging that battery. Our power supplies have become kind of an issue for us, and they're causing communication problems. So even though the system's been reliable for us for years, yeah, we're starting to see issues with it. How do I get off that, Frank?
Just take it to the left.
So what's the goals of the new system? Well, we want it to be non-proprietary so we can hire people off the street, not only to work on it internally, but also consultants that can help us. We want it to have Ethernet capability. It's got to be flexible, expandable, cost-effective, have to be able to be standardized. But that next to the last bullet there, ease of programming is important to us. We want it to be able to be installed, modified, and maintained easily. Now, the last bullet's probably the most important thing of any. In this day and age, network security is key. And we are working carefully with the IT department in order to make sure that what we install is going to be secure and that we don't have issues like we've heard about in the news. So I mentioned that the program's a little esoteric and circuitous. This is what the guys look like after they have done some programming on our RTUs. Our alternatives, we've looked at several different alternatives. First of all, we could have stuck with the existing manufacturer. It's a radio-based RTU system. But we also looked at two other systems, PLC-based. One with strictly cellular modems and one with a hybrid of cellular modems and microwave radios.
Talk about why the SCADA system is so important before you go into.
Frank's just asked me to talk about why the SCADA system is so important before I continue. Since it looks like I'm at a good spot here. You've seen this picture before, but why is the SCADA system so important? Well, it really saves us lots and lots of manpower. You can imagine if every time we needed to make a change to a valve, we'd have to run up to a site and make that valve change manually. So it saves lots of labor. And you can't even begin to imagine how hard it would be to run a plant like Sherard without a SCADA system. We've tried to do that in a test before for network security, where we'd shut down certain portions of it. It is really a lot more manpower involved to run anything without a security or without a SCADA system. So what we're looking at here, you've seen this picture before, is a panel that Dan built for us. It's a really clean looking panel. He's done a fantastic job building this first test panel. Up here on the upper right is the PLC. To the left are the power supplies. Down below are our terminal blocks. Really a great looking panel. He's doing a great job for us. And it's something that we built in-house. So we chose to go with the PLC system that was a hybrid, both the microwave radios and the cellular routers, for various reasons. It's the least expensive overall system. It was non-proprietary, and we can install and program this unit in-house. It's also supported locally through CRUM. As we've alluded to, ease of programming is key for us, and so is network security. Ironically, you look on the right, one of the negatives to this system is it is used PLCs. And PLCs are commonplace since they're easy for us to program. They're also easy to hack. So that's where our coordination with the IT group is going to be key to us. Without the IT group helping secure this system, we would have a serious concern. But I think we're going to be able to resolve that without any big issues. And the other negative to this system is initial setup has proven to be a challenge. Communication methods have to be resolved. James worked almost an entire day yesterday working on the setup for the radio-based system. So what we're looking at here is the round top valve house. And we're going to make this the site of our first radio collector hub. It will talk to various wells, but it's the first of many. So this will just be the one that we start with. We're already in a process. Yesterday, at the top of this tower, we installed the new radio system that's going to talk to Holman Well. So there's a few challenges remaining. The mountain sites are what drove this project initially to get started. We needed to have landline modems. We didn't have them. We were worried we're going to have issues with them. So mountain sites are an issue to this date. Hog Park's the worst. We just simply don't have a solution for Hog Park other than potentially satellites. Well, satellites have an issue in that there's such a latency in the communications that we can't use VPNs to talk to the normal satellite systems. And so we can't have a secure network. We haven't solved that yet, but we're hoping that with Starlink, which is the new satellite network that Elon Musk is deploying, that we're going to have a reduced latency and potentially be able to use that system to communicate with Hog Park. Now, Lake Owen and Rob Roy, again, a couple of mountain sites, still challenging, but we're hoping to be able to use cellular at Lake Owen and potentially even at Rob Roy. We're also looking at running a fiber line up to Rob Roy through CenturyLink's network. As we mentioned that this system is cellular based in certain sections, there are issues between Verizon and our chosen provider to work on the protocols. So that's another challenge that we're working on. As you can imagine, when we start talking about 80 some sites, it's going to take us a lot of time to get these sites changed over to the new system. So we're likely to have to use electricians to run conduits, wires, but the vast majority we're hoping to be able to install in-house. Yet to be seen, we'll just have to see how that goes through the years. And lastly, because it's such a big project, it's going to take us multiple years. So you might be asking yourself, what are we going to do at Hog Park if we can't figure out comms? Well, we got good news for you. Dan Bridges has agreed that if we build him this little old cabin, he's going to be the year-round operator up there at Hog Park. So all I have to do is work with Brad, and we're going to get this in the budget, and we've got a fallback solution if SATs don't work. And as Dan would say, greatest job ever. I did not happen to note that Jenny still doesn't know that he's going to be our Hog Park operator for year-round. So that's it for me. I think that's it for engineering in general. I'm going to turn it over to Frank to do whatever magic he does to click us through that. If you have any questions, let us know.
Okay, I do not see any questions. We'll give a few moments. Okay, seeing no questions, I will turn it over to the next group.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Doug Calhoun, and although I've only been the O&M manager for a little over 3 weeks now, I've had the opportunity to work with this group for 10 years, and I'm always amazed and awed at what this group can do. Their dedication to their job, their can-do attitude is just totally amazing. We're going to look at 3 different groups of O&M today, and we're going to start with the water group, distribution group led by John Savage. Take it away, John.
All right, I just want to give a quick overview of the distribution system. Really want to recognize all the guys in this picture. I can't give them enough credit for all that they've accomplished every day in all kinds of weather conditions. First, another thing I'd like to talk about are main breaks. We've had 41 main breaks this last year. So far this year, we've had 17 water main breaks. The picture above is from a 30-inch water main break on Randall Avenue. It took the crews over 24 hours to get this water main repaired. It was a huge leak and a big undertaking to get repaired. This main break happened at the beginning of March, just after COVID-19 pandemic hit. We didn't know much about this virus, but we did know there was no way to repair a 30-inch water main break and keep 6 feet of separation. Just really want to applaud the guys for all their hard work in getting that big repair done. Next, I'll talk about hydrants and valves real quick. The screen pretty much says it all in addition to everything on this slide. We also inspect and maintain all of the hydrants in the system. This includes painting and maintaining them when cars hit them and every other kind of damage you can imagine. We also replace a minimum of 10 valves a year. Pressure reducing valves. These pressure reducing valves in our system are an integral part of maintaining acceptable pressures in pressure zones. Having a good maintenance program identifies any maintenance needs and helps to prevent failures. Curb stops. We have 26,815 curb stops in the system. We repaired or replaced 84 curb stops and several service lines to go along with curb stop replacements. Water tanks. This slide pretty much says it all. Now that the tanks have been cleaned and inspected, we have them on a 5-year cleaning cycle. Inventory for asset management. Jeff and Chris have done a great job developing this program. I can't thank them enough. They're always helpful and willing to make changes to help improve its functionality and ease of operation. Employee development. COVID-19 really shut down everything we normally depend on for training and continuing education hours. This year we had to get creative. We relied on webinars and some in-house training to obtain enough hours to renew our licenses. Our goals for next year are, we really want to continue to focus on inventorying all of our assets. This will help us determine maintenance and replacement cycles for all of the assets we have in our system. We would also like to develop an in-house leak detection program to help minimize any water loss due to unknown leaks in the system. And lastly, we would just want to continue to pursue training and educational opportunities to keep improving ourselves and the distribution system. That concludes my portion of this presentation. I'd like to turn it over to Dennis Graham now.
My group is the Support Services Group, and today I'd like to talk about the activities of the portion of that group that takes care of all the system's water meters. At last count, we have over 24,801 water meters in the system that we are responsible for installing, maintaining, and repairing on a regular basis. Of those meters, 23,815 are either residential or the smaller meters in businesses. They have a projected lifespan of 20 years. There are 986 commercial large meter accounts. Those would be meters at the 1.5 inch size and larger. Those are projected for a 10-year lifespan. We complete new construction meter installations, complete all meter repairs, and resolve out of service or out of order work orders, and perform meter accuracy testing and troubleshooting. Those meters range in size from 5/8 up to 12 inches in diameter and are in a variety of different styles. The smaller residential meters are T10 positive displacement meters. We have turbines and compound meters that range from 1.5 inches up to 12 inch. There are fire protectors compound meters, which are used to ensure fire flows should those be needed. And recently I've introduced a new style of meter. It's called a Crone mag meter. It has no internal moving parts and is beneficial for places where we may have high total dissolved solids and measuring like cooling tower outflows. So to get the readings from those various meters, we've come a long ways. Back when I started, we still had ARB boxes. That was about 15 years ago, where you'd flip up the cover and make a positive electrical connection with an Advantage meter probe. That migrated to touchpads, which was a proximity digital transmission of information. And today we are installing e-coder meters, which can buffer 90 days of information, and they transmit that information through a radio signal. It can be picked up with a Trimble Ranger handheld device. And as Mark Mercer was speaking earlier, IT has installed 4 gateway collectors in the community, and it's currently, those gateways are picking up over 14,000 reads on a regular basis. The other nice thing about the software that we use to read these meters, we get a lot of information. The screen I'm showing you now is something we use to monitor the performance of those meters and get notified of irregularities. At the lower right-hand corner of the screen there, you can see some minor reverse flow alarms. These alarms came more frequently than we expect to see them, and so led us to investigate the address. This happens to be a 4-plex apartment building, and when we went to investigate why they were having so many backflows, we realized they did not have a backflow prevention device, which led to contacting the property owner and has allowed us to get them moving in the direction of installing backflow devices on each of their 4 buildings at that location. This next screen is kind of a neat collaboration of the result of finding information that started with our instrumentation group. They contacted us indicating that their Scada system had shown higher flows, sewer flows at a particular location. And they contacted our collection supervisor, who couldn't think of a reason we'd have those flows, and who contacted me. We looked at meters in the area that might be showing more flows than normally associated with that meter. If you look in the lower right-hand corner again, you can see where the days preceding this event, there were no flows. This happened to be the snack shack at the North Park soccer facility. And the building had been winterized, but apparently they had a freeze and break in a water line. This building was unoccupied, and by us identifying the meter that was flowing, we were able to call the city and have the Parks and Rec team go out there and shut the water off. So good collaboration between all the crews to get that resolved. If this hadn't been found, who knows how long it could have run. In the day and a half that they ran, it went through about 18,000 gallons. So as I mentioned before, the 20-year lifespan on small meters, that comes from AWWA. It's a recommendation from them. And meters are designed to meet these lifespans, and the larger meters run 10 years. So we have to look at the meter replacement schedule to make sure our activities are aligned with that, and we don't let meters get too far out of date. Built a spreadsheet that we can kind of track that. Top line of the spreadsheet shows the year that a meter was installed or last updated. The next 2 lines show the sizes or the count in the different sizes, either residential or commercial. And then this next line shows us the year that those meters need to be updated. We at first were working to replace at least 1,000 meters a year, and we're pretty much keeping up with the schedule. But due to some of these new housing developments in town and the growth of the city, we realized that that count was not going to allow us to keep up. If you look at the graph down below, the blue bars are the number of meters that would need to be changed annually in order to keep ahead of our 20-year schedule. The orange lines represent what would be the balance of meters needing to be changed if we only did 1,000 meters. Well, part of the problem was the method we were doing this. Typically, a meter tech would grab a handful of work orders and go knock on doors and try and get into a house to change the meter. Unfortunately, a lot of times we weren't able to connect and had to leave a note. The response to the notes was minimal. A lot of people maybe came home from work and threw that on their kitchen table and didn't think about it again for a while. So we changed our process. We allotted the first hour of the day for each meter tech to make phone calls on their own. And if they couldn't get a hold of someone, they'd leave a message and they would continue making phone calls until they could fill up their schedule. So because of this, we've done a lot better. So instead of this 1,000 meters a year, we've actually been able to increase that. You can see in 2018, we replaced over 1,300 meters, the same in 2019. 2020, we installed over 1,400 meters, and this year we are on track to do even more. Because of those changes, you can see the graph shows that we are keeping up with those changes instead of getting behind. This will allow other efficiencies. We can direct their activities towards meter testing and ensuring accuracy in different ways. So I'd like to turn this over to Chris Martinez now.
Hello, everybody. Chris Martinez. I'm here to give you an update on the collection system. Currently, in Cheyenne, our collection system has 346 miles of sewer main, 7,708 manholes, and 8 lift stations that we have to maintain on a daily basis. And without these operators right here doing the job, absolutely amazing job daily, we would probably have more backups and more problems. So thank you guys for doing an awesome job. As we all know, last year with the COVID, and due to the COVID rules and restrictions, we had to change our ways of working. Based on the guidelines we were given, we came up with the COVID draft. We had a little fun with this. And the COVID draft consists of a blind draw to create teams for a 1-month time frame to keep social distancing and everybody apart from each other. So our teams and tasks and schedules consist of a lead, a specialist, a tech 3, and a tech 2 or a tech 1. And each team was an A, B, or C team, and usually consists of 4 guys, and we have 1 extra, so 1 team got a 5th. And our schedule was A team would come in at 6:30 to 2:30, B team from 7 to 3, and C from 7:30 to 3:30 to stagger all those start times and not have everybody together at once. Our tasks on A team are miscellaneous. That would be lift stations, videos, manhole caps, stuff like that. B team is construction, which is point repairs, manhole replacements, and those things. And C team was jetting, area cleaning, sewer calls, and stuff like that. So this is an example of our roster for 1 month. As you can see, we got our teams, and our teams break up into 1 weeks, and then we rotate them every week for a month. Which actually worked out good for us, and we've done it for a year now. And results of this are we have area cleaned 148 miles, jetted or preventive maintenance 7 miles, sewer calls 18.5 miles, we videoed 12 miles, root cut 5 miles. We had a total of 15 blockages. 4 were found while area cleaning, 3 were resulting from main breaks, 1 was a broken pipe, 3 were grease and wipes, and 4 were roots. One of the root ones were resulting from roots growing from a homeowner's lateral and infiltrating our main and causing a backup. We turned the city over in 2 years, which usually takes us 3, maybe a little over 3. So on our attributes, our operational optimization on this one, we tried subjetting and jetting all VCP mains. And that helped out with GIS and worked with Jeff and his team up there and creating Cheyenne and turning everything into basins. And in those basins, we separated the VCP and PVC mains. And we jetted all the VCP mains in 1 year, which is 158 miles of vitrified clay pipe, a little under half of the city. So the guys did amazing on that. So in addition to that, we replaced 19 manholes. We excavated 30 point repairs, did numerous manhole caps and diamonds, several internal pipe patch repairs. We continued inventorying and inspecting the systems. And of course, a couple of the Dry Creek 1 hour projects. So the hidden positive outcomes of the whole COVID draft is morale is up due to the frequency of the schedule change. Less experienced techs got more training and experience on equipment, lift stations, camera van, and inspection programs. Nobody got burned out. So our goals we set are continue to improve the asset management program, start a study on root abatement versus root cutting, experiment with the drum cutters to cut out protruding laterals and fully open up mains, learn to train on our digital universal camera, increase our knowledge and understanding of our flow monitoring program, and continue training and then continue educating the employees to enhance advancement. And that does it for collection. I'll turn it back over to Doug.
Thanks, Chris. I just want to do a quick shout out and give some kudos to Chris. Harry Eberly, our supervisor for collection, had a family situation. At the last minute, Chris volunteered to step right in. So thank you, Chris, for doing that. At this time, we'll open it up for any questions anybody may have for O&M.
I believe as I mentioned earlier, we've got about 14 to 15,000. I'm sorry if anyone didn't see the question that was posed. It says, how many are left in the system to radio read? The systems, the gateways are picking up on 14 to 15,000, and that's based on propagation of the radio signal and weather conditions. I know that IT is looking at installing another gateway. Don't know that a location has been identified yet, but the more this happens, the more we'll be able to pick up on these radio read meters. The ones that are left are being changed out at, starting from this year forward, at least 1,200 per year. So looks to me like that would be 4 to 5 years. We should have everything in the system radio read.
If not, we'll turn it over to the next group.
All right. Well, good morning, all. So I had a nice opening statement planned out. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I do want to give a huge thank you to the O&M crew for all the Dry Creek 1 hour projects. Without that, Dry Creek wouldn't be able to, clean out the grease pits or anything like that you guys do. So I do definitely want to do a huge huge shout out. Thank you to the O&M guys. So for those of you who don't know, I am Matt Bulow. I am the Water Reclamation Division Manager. First and foremost, I would like to say I couldn't be more proud of the Water Reclamation Division and the tasks and the goals that were completed this last year. It was a difficult year, and as a group and as a family, we got through it. It didn't come just from the division. It came as the board as a whole. I've said it numerous times. The board to me is not just a place to work or organization, it's a family. So I'd also like to give a huge shout out to the Water Treatment Division, O&M, engineering, admin, and HR. It was a very unprecedented year with COVID. But as a team, as a family, we got through it. So hopefully with this presentation, you'll kind of see a quick little snapshot of how we got through this last year, how we attributed the last attributes from last year's goals and planning to the division, and what the future looks like for water reclamation. So just a quick overview. These are the goals that we gave the staff here at Water Rec last year from our last goals and planning. Was ED, employee and leadership development, OO, operational optimization, and IS, infrastructure strategy and performance. So I will apologize beforehand, all the managers. I've put this on all the manager notes every week, so they've probably heard this 10 times. And all board members, they've heard this at every board meeting I put on my board report. So the first one, employee development during COVID-19. Like O&M alluded to, and many other divisions, is very difficult to get the necessary training for the operators. We all are certified operators. In doing so, we need to maintain those licenses and get training. One way that we found out, and one way that we got around it, was one program called American Water College. American Water College is actually an online training system that gives operators basically a hands-on training from other treatment facilities around the nation. These treatment facilities is what they get trained on when they go into certification processes. Not a whole lot of treatment processes that we see here locally or even in the state, so that was a good baseline. Along with that, I actually had 8 operators that either leveled up or received their certification this last year in fiscal year 2020. That's a huge hats off to the O&M, Randy Broughton, the O&M supervisor, Cody Crucilius, lead O&M operator, getting those guys the training that they need and making sure that they're getting the necessary knowledge to progress within their career. Next one is AWWA. I know I don't speak alone, especially with management that attended these webinars. COVID-19 provided a lot of hurdles that we didn't see in the past. With COVID-19 and AWWA, they put on a lot of webinars that pertain to COVID-19 and how to get over those hurdles, some tips and tricks to get through it. And we attend a lot of the AWWA webinars. Along with that was the WEF. For those of you who don't know, WEF is similar to AWWA, but they're more on the wastewater side, especially helping with us with operators, then also discussing, the potential of COVID and waste stream, getting through those hurdles as well. Internal trainers, Randy Broughton and myself are actually through DEQ allowed to train operators for CEU. So this last year, we did numerous in-house trainings, one of those being an R&R training, the rules and regs. We are now allowed to, with the blessing of Wyoming DEQ, we're now able to train on their rules and regs. We usually attend a lot of conferences, one of those being SIPCA. This is for our IPP staff. It's usually held annually down in Black Hawk, Colorado. Unfortunately, we couldn't go this year, but they did hold it virtually. This allows the IPP staff to gain the necessary knowledge. Anything that's kind of, so to say, coming down the pipe, rules, regulations, some tips and tricks when it comes to industrial pretreatment. PitCon was the last conference, unfortunately, that we were able to send some staff to. PitCon is actually for laboratory staff, so we sent one lab supervisor and a quality control analyst to Chicago, actually year to date, a year ago, before the whole lockdown happened. PitCon was very good. It was about a week long. They were able to get, some insight into laboratory standards, methods, and once again, get some tips and tricks on laboratory analysis. Last one is ABC Innovation Certification. This was kind of a cool one that just occurred in January, actually. This conference is one that many folks wanted to attend. Reason being we haven't attended in the past is usually for the regulatory officials, i.e. from Wyoming DEQ, the personnel that basically police our certifications, whether it be water, wastewater, or O&M. We were actually invited this year. It was virtual. Just to give everyone an insight, it usually costs anywhere from $1,500 to $1,800 per person. This year we actually were able to sign up. I bought an attendance pass basically for $250 and shared it amongst 5 of us. That was Randy Broughton, Victor Spencer, Corey Penny, Nick Dennis, and myself, and we watched it on Teams. And it was a 3-day-long conference, and we got some good insight into how operators are trained, what they look for, and what the future looks like as far as getting certifications for water treatment, water rec, and also O&M. Just a quick little picture of the ABC, PitCon, and SIPCA. Next one attribute was infrastructure strategy and performance. With COVID, that gave us some downtime, especially with people working from home if they could, and limited staff. We were able to actually go through our inventory buildings at Dry Creek and Crow Creek. Believe it or not, we found items from the early 50s all the way through the 70s that we didn't realize that we had. What this allowed us to do is get rid of the old and get in some new equipment that could benefit us for the future. We're trying to get more proactive with our maintenance and our goals rather than reactive. And that helps with the inventory, knowing exactly what we have, what we don't have, what we need to order, and what we can put on the shelf in case of an emergency. Next item, asset management. I know that's been brought up multiple times. I said it last year at Goals and Planning. This is very near and dear to my heart, asset management. Big, huge thank you to Jeff Foreman and Chris Brink. You'll see it on the next slide. I did a little screenshot of the asset management app that we call out here. They put together an app for Dry Creek and Crow Creek. We were able to put headworks, pre-treat, primary clarification, and secondary clarification in. Right now, currently, all assets have been attributed in their respective tables at Dry Creek. We are currently updating all of Crow Creek in the asset management. Can't stress enough how important this asset management program is. Not only does it give buy-in to the folks that haven't seen or haven't been around for many, many years, you get to see the inside of a clarifier, get to know what makes it work, get to make it tick. And it's a knowledge base, kind of what Jeff alluded to. We're learning just as much as they're learning. If Jeff has a question, Jeff's come out to Dry Creek multiple times. We've walked the plant. He gets a better understanding of what we do. On the flip side of that, we also get to know exactly what Jeff and his staff do from the GIS aspect. My biggest thing is people plus process. We can have all the pumps, processes, basins, in the world, but if we don't have people, people are our most important asset. And with doing asset management, you're not only gaining knowledge, you're growing the employee for a career here with the Board of Public Utilities. So here's a quick overview. The top left corner is the asset management program at Dry Creek. All the green teal highlights is what has been entered into the system. Jeff went through and put all our influent effluent sides from the basins, from clarifiers to the channels from pre-treat into the system. Here's a picture many of you have probably seen. This is the step screen at Dry Creek. We've had some headaches with step screens at both Dry Creek and Crow Creek. Like I said, hats off to Randy Broughton and Cody Gracilius. They went through and bought a surplus of parts in the case of emergency for these step screens. This step screen at Crow Creek was damaged here recently. What would take in several weeks to get replacement parts we had in hand on stock, and we got this back up and going within a week and didn't disrupt process or anything like that. Just goes to show if we know what we have and we don't have, we can plan for emergencies without affecting the citizens of Cheyenne. Operational optimization. This was a big, so to say, melting pot of all divisions, one being instrumentation. Once again, hats off to the instrumentation guys, Ray Gilmore. With the PLCs, a lot of our PLCs, what they call is noise. What that does is they're doing the correction factor with meters, sensors. So Ray went in, especially with the primary digester, was able to get rid of some of that noise, fine-tune the upper and lower levels with the primary digester. That helps senior operators, junior operators know exactly what's happening if they didn't make any changes. Another big one was Scada, the alert screen. That previous picture from the step screen at Crow Creek, we believe that was caused by clicking on a pump, switching it from lead to lag, and a huge, large debris came up through the wet well. What instrumentation was able to do was actually create alert screens that will notify operators, hey, you're turned on a pump, did you put the step screens in hand? That's not just going to save time and money, it's also going to gain knowledge again and just helping everybody feel more comfortable, be a little bit more confident in the job that they do here. Next one is laboratory. Ever since I've been here, we've always done wet testing in-house. Here recently, in the last 3 months, Kent Loader, our lab supervisor, has reached out to a third-party contract lab where we found out that we can actually do wet testing for a little bit cheaper than what we could do in the house with wages and everything involved. This will allow Kent to do more cross-training for newer quality control analysts and just basically, share that institutional knowledge with everybody and not being tied up with wet testing. That goes along with cross-training with laboratory. Compliance staff hit records this year. They've performed more than 75 sector control inspections, 60 investigative sampling events. They've inspected 50 OWSs and done 7 industrial inspections. Year to date, that's the most we've ever done with us being a division. So hats off to them. They really worked their butt off this year. One thing that they have progressed forward with is Swift Comply. Swift Comply is a program that is for sector control that will bridge the gap between the BOPU and the IPP staff being the regulatory officials and establishments bridge that gap of communication of knowing exactly what's required and knowing exactly if anyone's in compliance or not in compliance. Biosolids disposal. Robert Bray with the biosolids program, we actually signed a 3-year, 5,000 ton agreement to get rid of some Class A biosolids that have been sitting here. That helps us for future growth. To Frank's point with the drying, if the EPA modified 2 summers method doesn't pan out, that helps us give a little bit more room out back west of Dry Creek facility. Code revisions, in the mix of sector control, biosolids, SWIFT comply, the staff still managed to find time to do code and ordinance revisions. It was a long, tedious task. They were able to update that. We shared it as a management team, and we actually sent it off to EPA. They've reviewed it. In the last couple of weeks, EPA sent back their comments, and we're actually in the process right now of reading through those and updating those, and we'll be sending those out as soon as we get those completed. Operations and maintenance. There was so much that I didn't put on the slide, to be honest. So I do have notes in front of me. I'll just briefly go over that. But blowers, when I first started here, this is my 10th year. Dry Creek has 5 blowers. There came a time this last September, we had 1 out of 5 blowers operating. Unfortunately, we got hit with a slug load of high ammonia, something with high ammonia, and we weren't able to treat it. So we actually ended up violating. Since that time, O&M, Randy Broughton, Cody Casilius, have been working very diligently on getting those blowers rehabbed. And currently right now we have 4 out of 5 blowers operating if we needed. Same thing with Crow Creek. Speaking of Crow Creek with the mixers, there's 12 mixers over there. We had those services last summer. One item that we did with, in regards to asset management is we had the service technician go through and make all the mixers, knowing if we needed to budget for new mixers in the future. Luckily, to our surprise, all 5 mixers, which are now 16 years old, will only need minimal repair. So we are budgeting to get the mixer sent out rather than buy mixers that's going to cost the BOPU thousands and thousands of dollars. Next one is fabrication. Here recently we bought a mobile welder that will go in the back of our maintenance truck. This will help with asset management. It will save money, and it'll actually grow our staff into learning new techniques, learning new obstacles that they'll overcome, especially with fabrication. If we need to weld something, if we need to build something out on the plant, we don't have to disassemble it, bring it up to the maintenance shop. We can actually do it right there in field and get that repaired. And then redundancy. That's a huge thing within water reclamation. There's redundancy. We have 1 pump that runs all the time, but we have 3 as a backup. That is part of what we're trying to achieve, especially with asset management and operational optimization, is getting those necessary redundant items up to speed in the case of emergency. So just a quick overview. I know it's not on my screen, but I got a list. It's the blowers, which I just briefly talked about. Recirc pumps at Dry Creek and Crow Creek. That's the recirc pumps for sludge 1 and 2. Recently installed rotocuts down in the basement for the dewatering. Primary sludge pumps, Crow Creek mixer, step screens, conveyors, generators, UV and IPS pumps. Big one there is the IPS pump over at Crow Creek. For those that don't know, this is actually the influent pump that brings in the wastewater into the Crow Creek facility. This pump has been down for years and years. We sent it off to Canada a few months back, and it just fired up a couple weeks ago. We got some repair work done to it. Now we have 3 out of 3 redundant IPS pumps that are now getting interchanged month by month, so they don't go stagnant or something else happens to them. Another kudos to O&M. This is our effluent meter here at Dry Creek. So the top left corner, believe it or not, we used to send personnel down in there, and it usually was the smallest person because the pipe was tiny. So that was yours truly. You have to duck crawl up, I believe, a 28-inch pipe with a broom and a ruler and scrub this meter and see exactly how deep the water is. With the thanks of O&M, they found the pipe, found out where the meter was, cut a hole and placed a manhole right above the meter. So all we have to do now is just walk down there with our broom and ruler and scrub it. It takes us about 2-3 minutes, and it's a lot safer, saves money, saves headaches, and just overall better design, better idea. So huge kudos to O&M on that aspect. Here's a picture of some blowers here at Dry Creek. This was here this last fall. Like I said, when we had 1 out of 5 blowers operating. This is blower 2. This is Ryan Andrick on your left, Ryan Henderson on your right. They're actually placing a blower number 2 in place so we can get that thing up and running. And then on the right side screen is the alert screen that Ray created. This is the IPS. If you switch an IPS pump, it gives you a whole bunch of warning screens, and we're really making sure, hey, are you sure you want to kick that thing on before it actually kicks on? like I said, this is going to help people learn, grow, and save time and money on repair costs. Cool little cartoon that we use around here. The fish inspector, that's Mr. Kent Loader. This is for wet testing. He's looking at fathead minnows and water fleas when he's doing wet testing. Like I said, we are outsourcing that now, but in years past, that's what he's been doing. Swift Comply, right corner is the biosolids, and then bottom right is the sector control. That is the gentleman pumping out a grease interceptor at a restaurant. So like I said, this is just the beginning. Some next moves, asset management. This is at the forefront of everything that we do here, not just within O&M. We'll migrate that over to compliance, biosolids, and the laboratory as well. File optimization, huge hat off to IT, Brian Cole, Mark Mercer, getting SharePoint up and going. I know we're getting everything kind of converted over, getting everything from files and data to SharePoint. This will help us not only find sheets that are many, many years old, but finding drawings that are many, many years old that takes hours will now take a few minutes to find out. One of our biggest goals this upcoming year, if we're allowed to, with safety concerns and COVID-19, we really want to get out to the public as far as what water reclamation is all about, what we do, what compliance is all about, what the sector control is all about, what biosol is all about. Just getting everybody informed. You know, it's the stigma of you flush the toilet and it goes away. We kind of want to change that and make sure everybody's aware of what we do and the work that gets done out here. Slow and steady growing pains. I can say, you know, especially for myself, it is slow and steady. We've had a huge retirement this last couple of years. A lot of the institutional knowledge went out the door that time, but we're gaining that knowledge back, and we're learning things that weren't known back in the day. So we're experiencing a little bit of growing pains, but as a division, as a family, we'll get through it. Last but not least is ownership, especially with asset management, operational optimization. Is to Jeff and Chris's point, we are actually, they're building the asset program for us. They're allowing us to do buy-in. They're allowing us to customize it. To me, that's going to create ownership, and it'll actually benefit not just the division, but the Board of Public Utilities as a whole for the future. It won't just be a proactive, or it won't be a reactive maintenance or reactive issue or emergency. It'll be a proactive response, which will benefit all organizations involved. And with that, are there any questions? I believe there's one. Yes. So Mark Mercer, another one, another huge operational optimization infrastructure strategy. Mark Mercer, David Cole, James Cisco, hats off to those guys. They actually ran fiber optic between Dry Creek and Crow Creek. This is a huge time saver. This is a huge safety saver. This is a huge Matt can sleep at night saver. What they did was they created or ran fiber optic between Dry and Crow Creek for communication, which will allow the speed to increase and also the safety and security of it. We can actually, believe it or not, move the camera from Dry Creek to Crow Creek, which we couldn't do that before. We can actually see if somebody enters the facility or if we need to look at anything from Dry Creek. Along with that, Scada, to Carrie's point, why is Scada so important, is in years past with the T1 line, if the T1 line went down, we'd have to place an operator at Crow Creek because we couldn't see Crow. Now we can talk between the two servers, between the two facilities, and we can actually see if Crow Creek's indeed running, if there's an issue, if there's something that needs to be changed, and if anything needs to happen, if we need to send an operator over there or not. So yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark, for bringing that up. Oh, is there another one? Okay, so one more, or another question. John Savage, did you ever determine where the ammonia came from? Unfortunately, no. It was a different slug load than we've seen in the past. I won't bore you guys with all the acronyms, but the ammonia increased, but the ORP stayed the same. So to us, that was a different ammonia slug load that came into the facility. We are still actively pursuing that. Unfortunately, we have to wait until it happens again, and then the IPP staff will do their due diligence on tracking down the culprit. All right. Any more questions? All right. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Clint.
Hello. I realize I am the last person between our meeting today and lunch. So I will try to go as quickly and as efficiently as possible here. Can someone confirm that they can indeed see my screen? With that, I'll go ahead and get started. Like Matt, I'm going to cover a couple of the areas where we did some operational optimization, as well as our our infrastructure and strategy. So one of those is asset management. We've covered that quite a bit today. We're not as far along as some of the other areas. Source of supply has a lot of their information in GIS and the asset management, but they are now combining their two systems together. Water treatment, we're just beginning, and we are developing our asset tables, and we've started up. One of the areas that we've had some challenges this year was as far as asset management and maintaining our equipment is here in this picture. These are our house pumps. These are the pumps that provide pressurized water to our facility and help us to apply and add the chemicals that we need in order to treat water. The picture here is of staff staging to replace one of those house pumps. As has been mentioned in other presentations today with engineering, our facility is now 20 years old, and we're starting to see equipment like the house pumps begin to fail. We do have good news. We are starting the construction on our hydroelectric generation facility this year. This will help us to be more energy independent. It will also help us to avoid some of the challenges that our neighbors had to the south this year when they experienced some of those recent snowstorms. There are some additional things we're doing to, as part of our operational optimization. As part of this, we are improving the ways we are tracking electrical use. We're also changing over our lighting to LED lighting to reduce demand and improve the amount of energy that we can sell back to the grid or utilize within our facility. We have had opportunities over this past year to replace positions, and when we replace positions, we evaluate as to whether we can improve efficiencies in those. Well, one of those is to look at opportunities for cross-training, try to combine people with similar skills, and maybe try to combine efforts. To that effect, we have combined our source of supply and wells into one group. We've also combined with Matt's team and water reclamation and our team here in our laboratories into one group. And we are currently sharing an administrative assistant as well. One of our big accomplishments this year is that we have worked to change our surface water groundwater blend. Since the mid-1990s, we have done a 75% surface water to 25% groundwater blend. That was done so that we added minerals and naturally adjusted our pH so the water was less likely to be corrosive as it was in people's homes. And that way it was less likely to dissolve lead and copper from pipes in people's homes. Since we constructed our treatment plant in 2002, we've added the ability to do some additional pH adjustment. So we no longer need that 75-25 blend. So we conducted a study to see what we could accomplish while maintaining the water quality and protecting water quality for our customers. We have worked with EPA to accomplish that, and we are currently doing an 80-20 blend. If everything continues like we anticipate that it will, and the study indicates that it will, we'll be able to further reduce that next year to an 85-15 blend. As Frank indicated, we are looking at switching to a hypochlorite disinfection process out of the water treatment plant. The purpose behind that is that hypochlorite is much safer for our staff than chlorine gas. It also reduces the amount of pH adjustment that we would need in our water. Hypochlorite lowers the pH less than chlorine, so we would also need less sodium carbonate to better balance our pH. We have gone out and obtained some cost estimates on what we think it would take to install a hypochlorite system. But in evaluating those cost estimates, we think we can repurpose some equipment at the plant and dramatically reduce those costs. So in this upcoming year, we're going to be working with an engineering team to design a hypochlorite system, incorporating some of the facilities that we already have. As was also indicated by Frank earlier, we have been looking at potentially increasing our treatment plant capacity by re-rating our filters. So we've been looking at through the past year as well. We do want to understand our aquifers better. We want to know how we can sustainably use our aquifers, how we can improve groundwater recharge. We need to identify some future locations for additional wells, and possibly even look at using aquifer storage and recharge in the future. So to do this, we have conducted several studies. We want to use those studies to, well, an example was a study that was conducted last year where we used some ground penetrating radar to identify where the sands, gravels, and clays are located underground. And that's what the picture is here. It was a helicopter flight that was done to accomplish that. We want to combine all of these studies together into a unified groundwater model. From this model, we hope to be able to identify where recharges occur in our aquifers and possibly even come up with some ways to enhance that aquifer recharge. A possible example might be installing snow fences above areas where the groundwater recharges so we capture snow and improve the amount of water that we're getting underground. Another area that we've been focused on in this past year is our Pond 3. Pond 3 is the area where we store and separate the solids and the material that we remove from our water to make the water safe to drink. Over time, this pond fills with sediment, and it costs about $500,000 every 3 years to remove those solids from that pond. We're testing utilizing some drying bags to remove more of the water and to dry those solids, making it more easy to transport those to neighboring ranches, and to possibly even utilize those solids with our biosolids as part of our biosolids program. We think that we can accomplish that and reduce our costs from $500,000 every 3 years to maybe around $70,000 a year. As far as some of our staffing, we have been adding, as part of our annual review processes, reviewing our standard operating procedures. Our staff have been pretty good at identifying some small ways that we can improve operations with that, and to improve our processes. And since I know we're getting very close to the end of the day, I want to give one shout out for one of the methods that we've improved on our training. One of the big challenges we have had this past year is training our staff. 3/4 of our staff work nights and weekends. So it becomes a challenge to get training done with those guys. For them to come in and train during normal office hours or any shift that's outside of their normal shift, it kind of interferes with the time that they have to rest before returning to work. So we have been looking at ways to do training using the technologies that we're using today as part of this goals and planning meeting, such as using video and modern communications methods. A recent example was some training conducted by Jason Land, who updated our respiratory training by creating a video that the operators could participate in and pass questions on as part of their normal shifts. And so that was very well received by our operators, and they appreciated that effort. So with that, I will go ahead and turn over the end of my presentation and thank everybody for participating.
Okay, thank you, Clint. Don't know if anybody still has any questions for Clint. If you do, I can try to answer them. Again, great job, everybody. We're right on time. I showed 12 o'clock pretty much exactly. So I just want to tell again, staff, thank you. I mean, as you can see, we have a fabulous group of people working here at the board. Great job by everybody today. I think another thing that's really important, I think you could see out of most of these, most of the people work here are very highly skilled and trained in what they do. They have their specialty areas. And if it wasn't for the team effort of everybody, you know, what we take for granted here in the city for our water sewer services, just wouldn't happen. I think one thing we take for granted, we turn that water faucet on every day to get a drink of water or to shower or bathe, and we expect clean water to come out of the tap. And the same thing we expect if we flush that toilet or we open up a faucet and those flows go down the drain. We expect that to happen. We just expect that. And I think hopefully you can see by today, there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes, a lot of highly trained, skilled individuals that operate and maintain this system. But yet just all the financial obligations and criteria that we follow just to make sure that we have the appropriate funds available to continue operation at a high level. And so that's our goal, is to provide the best and most affordable water services and sewer services to our community. And so hopefully through the display of some of the presentations today, that you can see that that is our goal, and there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes. So thank you, everybody. I want to just thank you, everybody, for participating today. Again, thank you for your time this morning. Appreciate our board members being on. I appreciate the mayor and city council members being on. I appreciate all of our staff that has participated. And I know a lot of staff has observed this today, so thank you. And then I know we've had several from in the community that have checked in and have been monitoring what's been said today. So we just want to thank you for your time. Again, the last thing I'll end by, we are always excited and willing to show off our facilities. And so as you can see, there's a lot going on here at the board. If at any time, anyone from the public, from the city council members, mayor's office, even our board members, if anybody would like to have any additional tours, we would be glad to offer those to you at any time. All you'd need to do is just reach out to me, call our office, and we'd be glad to get you out and let you see these facilities and meet some of the people that operate these facilities. I always think that the more education we have, our customers have, our city governing body officials, our board members have, the better we understand how this system works, and the more educated you are when we have these kind of discussions, and we understand the implications and the magnitudes of what go into operating really a pretty complex system. And so, again, I just want to offer that to everybody. So please reach out if you ever have the time and desire. We'd be glad to offer you tours of our facilities. So with that, we're going to end this morning. Again, thank you, staff. Thank you for all those that participated. Great job. And with that, have a great remainder of your day and a great weekend this weekend. And again, thank you for joining us today for our goals and planning session. Have a great day. Bye-bye.